Hey guys, tonight we're heading back in time to a world where the land was everything, and tools weren't just for work, they were woven into the very fabric of life. Imagine walking through the dense, lush fields of ancient Mesoamerica. The sun beats down as you see farmers working tirelessly, tending to crops with tools that may seem simple, yet were surprisingly sophisticated for their time. You probably won't survive this if you had to work all day under the sun. But there's something deeply captivating about these ancient tools that once fed a vast empire. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I want to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is. Let's share our locations and local times as we settle into tonight's journey. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. We're talking about something very close to the hearts of the ancient Aztecs, their farming tools. These tools helped feed an empire. Quite literally, the Aztecs were masters at cultivating a variety of crops. But it wasn't just the seeds that made them successful. It was the craftsmanship of the tools they used to grow, harvest, and protect their food. And tonight, we'll uncover some of the most important, yet often forgotten, tools that Aztec farmers once used. Let's start by thinking about something we might take for granted today. How do you get the soil ready for planting? Well, for the Aztecs, this wasn't as simple as grabbing a shovel from the garden shed. No, they had special tools designed for specific purposes. One of their most ingenious inventions was the koa. This farming tool was shaped like a hoe, and its blade was used for tilling soil. Picture this. You're standing in a field of maize, with a koa in hand, carving through the earth, preparing it for planting. It's not an easy task, but with the right tool, it feels almost like second nature. The koa was an essential tool that allowed the Aztecs to turn over the earth efficiently. They were masters of this kind of labor-intensive work, and this tool made it possible to cultivate vast fields of maize, beans, and squash, the staples of their diet. Historians still argue whether the koa was the only tool used for soil preparation or whether the Aztecs also relied on other methods, such as using their hands or stones, to loosen the earth. But one thing is clear: the koa was central to Aztec agriculture, and its effectiveness speaks to the ingenuity of the people who crafted it. As we dive deeper into the tools used by the Aztecs, we'll uncover not just the physical objects, but the ways these tools were connected to the rhythm of the land and the cosmos. For the Aztecs, agriculture was a sacred task. The work in the fields wasn't just about sustenance, it was about honoring the gods, ensuring the fertility of the soil, and maintaining the balance of the universe. So, let's move forward and discover how these humble tools were so much more than just farming implements. They were part of the intricate tapestry of Aztec life. As we move deeper into the tools that helped Aztec farmers cultivate the empire, let's take a moment to reflect on the ingenuity of the Aztec agricultural system. Imagine the hustle and bustle of a market day in Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. The air is thick with the scent of freshly harvested maize, squash, and chili peppers. It's the culmination of months of hard work in the fields, all made possible by the tools and techniques perfected by Aztec farmers. But the tools we're about to talk about weren't your typical hand tools. They were used in ways that connected the work of the fields to the daily lives of the people. Now, speaking of tools, let's think about something that sounds a little unusual: the ladle. At first glance, you might think it's just a weapon used for hunting. But here's the twist: the ladle, a tool designed to launch spears or darts with incredible speed and accuracy, was also used for something a bit unexpected in farming. You see, this weapon also doubled as a farming tool. In fact, it was used to break up soil in the field. The ladle, with its unique handle and dart-launching mechanism, allowed Aztec farmers to loosen the earth in preparation for planting crops, making it easier to dig into hard, compacted soil. Historians still debate whether the ladle was commonly used for this purpose or if it was more of a specialized tool for certain areas. Regardless, It's fascinating to think that something typically associated with hunting was adapted for agricultural use, blending the line between survival, sustenance, and warfare in one ingenious design. It speaks to the adaptability of the Aztecs in finding creative solutions to everyday problems. And let's face it, you probably wouldn't survive if you had to use a dart-throwing weapon to dig up your garden, right? But it wasn't just any farmer wielding these tools. The ladle and other implements were often used in a ceremonial context as well. When the Aztecs worked their fields, they were doing more than just planting crops. They were maintaining the cosmic balance. It wasn't just a practical activity, it was a spiritual one. The gods of agriculture, like Tlaloc, the god of rain, and Exoquetzal, the goddess of flowers, were invoked to ensure a bountiful harvest. The tools used in these sacred rituals were integral to the success of the farming system. The same ladle that could be used to launch darts at game could also be used to launch the hopes and prayers of farmers into the hands of the gods. So, imagine this. Under the shade of a tree near a canal, an Aztec farmer stands, holding his ladle with the same care and reverence he would wield a ceremonial instrument. As he loosens the soil, he whispers a prayer, asking the gods for a fruitful harvest. The air is calm, but there's a sense of anticipation. This tool, this simple object, is not only preparing the land for maize, beans, and squash, but also ensuring that the gods remain pleased with their work. And with that, we move from the ladle to another essential tool of the Aztecs, one that's just as practical but more commonly associated with daily labor, the macuahuitl. This tool, often recognized for its sharp obsidian blades, was primarily used as a weapon, but in the hands of Aztec farmers, it was just as useful in the fields. The macuahuitl was especially effective for clearing land and cutting through thick underbrush. Its serrated edges made it perfect for chopping down wild vegetation or preparing fields for planting. Historians have long discussed how the macuahuitl was a dual-purpose tool. Some argue it was designed mainly for combat, with its obsidian edges making it a fearsome weapon, while others claim its agricultural role was just as important, and perhaps even more common. Regardless, its versatility makes it one of the most fascinating agricultural tools in the Aztec toolkit. Now, you might be thinking, a weapon as a farming tool. Well, that's the beauty of the Aztec ingenuity. In a world where resources were limited and tools had to be multi-purpose, the Aztecs adapted to their environment in ways that were both practical and resourceful. Imagine holding a macuahuitl, its weight balancing comfortably in your hands as you move through the dense foliage, clearing space for crops to grow. This was just another example of how the Aztec farmers, much like warriors, used every tool at their disposal to ensure the success of their fields. And let's not forget, this isn't just about agriculture. This is about survival, about ensuring the empire could thrive. The tools, no matter how they were used, were all part of the greater plan to feed the people, support the warriors, and keep the gods satisfied. Every tool had its purpose, its place in the larger narrative of life, death, and rebirth. So, as the macuahuitl slices through the underbrush, it's not just creating space for the next crop. It's also forging a deeper connection to the earth that sustains them. Now, as we venture deeper into the fascinating world of Aztec farming, let's step away from the mighty tools like the macuahuitl and ladle and consider something far more humble, yet just as essential, the temascal. Now, before you picture yourself in a sleek, modern spa with candles and essential oils, let's set the scene in the Aztec world. The temascal was a steam bath, but it wasn't just for relaxation. It had a much deeper purpose, something that directly connected the physical labor of the Aztec farmers to their spiritual and agricultural practices. Picture this. You're walking through a bustling Aztec village, the scent of fresh maize and squash in the air. In the distance, you hear the soft, rhythmic sounds of chanting. You make your way toward a small building made of stone, surrounded by lush vegetation. This is the temascal, a steam bath used not only for purification, but also for rejuvenating the body after a long day in the fields. For Aztec farmers, After a day of tilling soil, planting seeds, or harvesting crops, the Temescal was a place to refresh and restore their strength. But here's the interesting part. Historians have debated whether the Temescal was strictly a tool for personal hygiene or whether it had a more specific agricultural purpose. Some argue that the steam bath helped farmers cleanse their bodies after contact with the soil and crops. Others believe that it played a critical role in connecting the spiritual with the physical. The Aztecs saw the land as sacred, and everything from planting seeds to harvesting crops was a form of offering to the gods. A visit to the Temescal could serve as a ritual purification, preparing farmers for their next day's work in the fields. It was as much about spiritual and physical renewal as it was about preparing for the labor ahead. Imagine entering the Temescal, the heat of the steam wrapping around you as the earthy scent of wet stone fills your lungs. As the heat clears away the dust and sweat of the day, you can feel the deep connection between the work you've done in the fields and the prayers you offer to the gods of rain and fertility. This wasn't just about cleaning yourself after a hard day's work. It was about honoring the sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth, the cycle that rice and maize would follow in the coming seasons. It was a tool that allowed the farmers to reset, both physically and spiritually, before they returned to their work. While the Temescal wasn't exactly a tool in the traditional sense, it played a key role in the broader understanding of Aztec agriculture. It shows us how intertwined their farming practices were with their spiritual beliefs. Every aspect of farming was sacred, and the tools they used, even something as seemingly simple as a steam bath, were deeply rooted in that connection to the earth and the gods. So, the next time you take a warm shower or visit a spa, you might consider the ancient practice of using steam not just for relaxation, but as a vital part of the farming ritual. As we move from the Temescal, let's turn our attention to the more practical tools that directly aided in crop cultivation, like the maguey spade. The maguey plant, which was crucial to the Aztec diet and economy, required special tools for harvesting. Maguey, a type of agave, was used for everything from food and drink to textiles and building materials. The Aztecs cultivated it for its sweet sap, which was turned into pulque, a fermented beverage that was not only a daily staple, but also used in religious ceremonies. To harvest maguey, the Aztecs used a specialized tool, the maguey spade. This tool was designed to carefully extract the sap from the plant, ensuring that the farmer didn't damage the maguey itself, allowing for multiple harvests from the same plant. The blade of the maguey spade was sharp and durable, perfect for cutting through the tough, spiky leaves of the agave. What's fascinating here is how such a specific tool made the Aztecs so efficient in their farming. They didn't just harvest plants, they made sure that their agricultural practices were sustainable, ensuring that maguey fields could continue to produce for generations. Historians still debate how widespread the use of the maguey spade was. Was it used throughout the empire, or only in certain regions where maguey was cultivated in abundance? One thing is for sure, it was a vital tool in a society where maguey had so many uses. Without it, the Aztecs might not have been able to sustain the production of pulque, an important food and ceremonial item. This spade, in essence, helps support both the agricultural and cultural needs of the Aztec people. Imagine yourself now in the heart of an Aztec maguey field, the spade in hand. You carefully slice through the thick leaves, extracting the sap with precision. As you work, you can hear the hum of the field around you, the wind rustling the agave plants, the distant sounds of the marketplace, and the faint chanting of farmers preparing for the day's ritual. The maguey spade is not just a tool, it's a connection to the life force of the land, to the crop that sustains not only your body, but the spiritual and cultural practices that define your world. And there you are, deep in the rhythm of work, using the very tool that connects you to the ancient systems that kept the Aztec Empire fed and thriving for centuries. With every cut, you're participating in a centuries-old tradition of honoring the earth, the gods, and the community. It's a far cry from modern farming, but in the Aztec world, it's as natural as breathing. Now, As we continue to delve into the everyday yet extraordinary tools used by Aztec farmers, let's take a moment to consider how the concept of water management was integral to their agricultural success. Aztec society was not just about growing crops, it was about creating harmony between humans, the land, and the forces of nature, particularly water. This brings us to one of the Aztecs' most vital tools for cultivating crops, the tlaxco, a water management device used to ensure that crops received just the right amount of water, even in the most challenging environments. In the fertile valley where Tenochtitlan was built, water was both a blessing and a challenge. The Aztecs relied heavily on canals, reservoirs, and aqueducts to bring water from Lake Texcoco to their fields. The tlaxco was used to control and direct water from these systems to the fields, ensuring that crops like maize, beans, and squash were irrigated efficiently. Picture the scene now. You're walking along a narrow canal, the sound of flowing water in your ears. Farmers stand at various points, using the tlaxco to direct the flow of water, making sure that each field gets the right amount. It's a delicate balance, and one that had to be maintained through meticulous effort. Historians are still unsure about the full extent of the tlaxco's use, especially when compared to other, more complex irrigation systems used by ancient civilizations. Some believe that it was primarily used to manage the water in the chinampas, the man-made, floating gardens the Aztecs created to maximize the use of limited land space. Others argue that it was part of a broader system that worked across the empire, even beyond the capital. Regardless, it's clear that the Aztecs understood water like few others. They recognized that without careful management, crops wouldn't thrive, and the delicate ecosystems that supported their food production could collapse. Now, think about the labor involved. The tlaxco wasn't a simple tool, it was a symbol of the deep connection the Aztecs had with their environment. It wasn't just about feeding the people, it was about respecting the forces of nature that sustained them. Each tlaxco carried a deep spiritual and practical significance, as it allowed the Aztecs to tap into the life-giving properties of water and harness them for their crops. Moving from the tlaxco, we must also talk about another essential tool that directly supported the Aztec way of life, the exochipili, or the tools used for their sacred flower gardens. Flowers weren't just for decoration in Aztec culture, they were a symbol of the gods, the beauty of nature, and fertility. The tools used to cultivate these gardens were carefully crafted and imbued with spiritual significance. They weren't simply used for agricultural purposes. They were used in ceremonies dedicated to the gods, and the gardens themselves were often seen as offerings to ensure a successful harvest and divine favor. The exochipili gardens were often planted with flowers like Sempolxixitl and Ixoquitlaupli, which were used for various rituals and ceremonies. These flowers played an essential role in Aztec agriculture by providing offerings to gods like Ixoquetzal, the goddess of flowers, and Tlaloc, the god of rain. The tools used in these gardens were more specialized than those in the fields, designed to carefully tend to delicate flowers and plants. Imagine now standing in one of these sacred gardens, surrounded by vibrant marigolds and roses. The air is thick with the sweet scent of the flowers, and the hum of the city in the distance fades into the background. You're using a small, intricately designed tool to carefully tend to the flowers, knowing that the work you're doing is not just about beauty, it's about maintaining balance between humans and gods. With every flower you plant, you're not only beautifying the garden, you're ensuring the blessings of the gods upon your crops and your people. Historians have long debated the exact nature of the exochipili gardens. Were they purely for religious use, or were they also a source of food and medicinal plants? The answer, as with many things in Aztec culture, lies in a delicate balance. These gardens served multiple purposes, but at their core, they were about honoring nature's beauty and fertility. Just as the farmers used their koa and makuahuitl in the fields, the priests and gardeners used their tools in the exochipili gardens to keep the gods happy and ensure prosperity. Now, let's step back from the sacred and return to the practical tools used by Aztec farmers in everyday life. The temelacatl, a tool used to shape the earth for planting, was another essential part of the Aztec farming toolkit. This tool was used to create mounds, or raised beds in the soil, allowing the crops to grow efficiently even in less than ideal terrain. The raised beds helped retain water, ensured better root growth, and prevented soil erosion, problems that are still faced by modern farmers today. These mounds, known as chinampas, were key to the success of Aztec agriculture, particularly in swampy or marshy areas. With the temelacatl in hand, you would move through the field, shaping the soil into raised mounds that would allow water to pool around the crops, ensuring their growth even during the driest seasons. Imagine the satisfaction of knowing that your work will allow the crops to thrive, despite the challenges of the land. It's a reminder of how the Aztecs were masters of their environment, using tools that allowed them to maximize the land's potential. The temelacatl wasn't just a tool for the farmer, it was a tool for survival. The Aztecs didn't just work the land, they transformed it, shaping it into something that could support their growing population. Every mound, every piece of tilled soil was a testament to their ingenuity and connection to the earth. Continuing our journey through the tools and techniques that fueled Aztec agriculture, let's turn our attention to another important aspect of their farming practices: crop diversification. While maize, beans, and squash were the backbone of the Aztec diet, they also grew a variety of other crops, and the tools they used for those specialized plants were just as fascinating. One crop that stands out is the cacao, the plant that produced the beans used to make the Aztecs' most prized beverage, chocolate, a chocolate drink often flavored with spices like chili and vanilla. Cacao beans were so valuable that they were even used as currency in the Aztec Empire. But harvesting cacao was no small task. The tools used to manage the delicate cacao trees, which thrived in the humid, tropical climate, were quite different from those used for maize or squash. To harvest the cacao pods, Aztec farmers used a curved, machete-like tool called a topasli. This tool had a sharp, sturdy blade, ideal for slicing open the thick skins of the cacao pods without damaging the precious beans inside. Imagine walking through the lush, green cacao grove, the scent of rich, earthy cacao filling the air, and the rhythmic swing of the topasli as it cuts through the pods. The deep green leaves of the cacao tree glisten in the filtered sunlight, and the ground is soft beneath your feet. You're harvesting one of the empire's most prized commodities, an essential crop that would not only feed the people, but also bring about wealth and reverence. Historians still argue whether cacao was truly as integral to Aztec society as we believe, or whether it was more of a luxury product reserved for the elite and the rulers. Some suggest that cacao was more widespread among common folk, while others point to the royal consumption of the chocolate drink as evidence of its exclusivity. Regardless, the importance of the topasli, and by extension, cacao, cannot be overstated. It was more than just a crop. It was a symbol of the elite and of the complex social structure that sustained the Aztec Empire. But it wasn't just the cacao crop that benefited from specialized tools. The Aztecs were master gardeners, and their tools reflected the sophistication of their agricultural practices. Another crop that required specialized tools was chili, which was an essential ingredient in Aztec cooking and also used for medicinal purposes. The chili harvest required a delicate touch, and the tools for picking, drying, and grinding the peppers were finely crafted. Aztec farmers used a variety of tools, including small, curved knives to carefully slice the peppers from the plants, ensuring that the harvest was not damaged. The maguey plant, another cornerstone of Aztec agriculture, also required a specific set of tools. The maguey, or agave, was used for everything from making pulque to textiles, and its harvesting was an arduous task. Aztec farmers used a large, heavy spade called the maguey spade to cut into the thick, spiny leaves and extract the sap. This sap was then fermented into pulque, a drink that was as sacred as it was nourishing. The maguey spade was one of the most important tools in the Aztec farming toolkit, and it reflected the versatility of the Aztec people. Not only did it help them harvest crops for food, but it also helped them produce goods that were used in ceremonies and exchanges. Now, imagine the maguey spade in your hands as you stand before a fully grown maguey plant. The thick leaves of the agave seem almost indestructible, but with a few measured, precise strikes of the spade, you carve into the tough fibers of the plant, slowly extracting the valuable sap. Your work is hard, but it is rewarding. This sap will be fermented into pulque, the drink that will nourish both the body and the spirit. It will be offered to the gods in ceremonies, shared with fellow farmers, and used as currency. The maguey spade, with its sturdy construction, is a testament to Aztec ingenuity. Like so many tools, it was a bridge between practical necessity and spiritual significance. Historically, the question remains, how did the Aztecs balance the spiritual and practical sides of agriculture? Was the cultivation of crops and the use of tools seen purely as a way to feed the people, or was there a deeper meaning in every act of farming? Historians still argue whether the Aztecs viewed their farming practices as a direct act of worship or whether their rituals were separate from their everyday work. But what is undeniable is that their farming tools, from the topasli to the maguey spade, were imbued with meaning. The act of harvesting, the tools used, and the crops tended were all interconnected with the Aztec worldview. This understanding of agriculture as a sacred practice is vital in understanding the Aztecs' relationship to the land. Every tool they used was not just about feeding their empire, but about sustaining their connection to the gods, the earth, and their community. Each crop, each plant, and each tool served a purpose far beyond just providing food. It was part of the spiritual and cultural fabric that held the empire together. Now, imagine standing back from the fields, looking out over the crops, the tools still in your hands, and knowing that your work, your harvest, was more than just a job. It was a part of something bigger. It was part of a cycle of life, death, and rebirth that had sustained the Aztecs for centuries. The tools you hold are not just instruments of labor. They are vessels of continuity, connection, and culture. Each swing of the topasli, each use of the maguey spade, was a reaffirmation of the relationship between humanity and the earth. The work was sacred, and the tools, though simple, were the instruments through which this sacred work was accomplished. Continuing our journey through the tools that helped shape the Aztec agricultural landscape, we now turn our focus to one of the most remarkable aspects of their farming techniques, the chinampa. The chinampa system, often referred to as floating gardens, was one of the most sophisticated and effective methods of farming ever developed. This system allowed the Aztecs to cultivate crops in an environment that otherwise would have been challenging for traditional farming. The shallow lakes surrounding Tenochtitlan, their island city. The unique tools and techniques used in chinampa farming provide us with a window into the advanced agricultural practices of the Aztecs and their remarkable ability to adapt to their environment. Imagine, for a moment, standing at the edge of a lake in the Valley of Mexico. Before you, a series of small, artificial islands stretch out across the water. These are the chinampas, man-made plots of land that float on the surface of the lake, creating ideal conditions for growing crops. The Aztecs would create these floating islands by staking rows of willow branches into the lake bed, weaving them together to form a sturdy frame. Then, they would add layers of mud, reeds, and other organic material, creating a fertile surface for planting. Now, imagine that you are an Aztec farmer, standing on one of these chinampas with a small, specially designed tool in hand. This tool, often a type of digging stick or hoe, was used to manage the crops growing on the floating gardens. The tool would be used to aerate the soil, mix in organic matter, and ensure that water was distributed evenly across the crops. The tools used on the chinampas had to be lightweight yet durable, as farmers spent long hours working on the floating plots, maintaining the crops and ensuring that they thrived. These tools were designed not just for efficiency, but also for the unique environment of the chinampas, where soil management and irrigation were key to success. Historians still argue about how the Aztecs developed the chinampa system. Some believe it was an adaptation of pre-existing Mesoamerican farming practices, while others suggest it was a uniquely Aztec innovation. What is clear, however, is that the Chinampa system was a perfect solution for the challenges of farming in the lake environment. The floating gardens allowed the Aztecs to grow crops year-round, maximizing the use of the land in an otherwise inhospitable landscape. The fertile mud of the lake bed, combined with the constant water supply, created ideal conditions for growing maize, beans, squash, and a variety of other crops. The use of the Chinampa system allowed the Aztecs to sustain a dense population and feed their ever-growing empire. But the Chinampa system wasn't just about practical farming. It was also deeply tied to Aztec spirituality and their understanding of the natural world. For the Aztecs, the land was sacred, and every aspect of farming was viewed through a spiritual lens. The process of creating a Chinampa and tending to it was seen as an act of respect for the earth and the gods. The floating gardens were often dedicated to Tlaloc, the god of rain, and Xoaquetzal, the goddess of flowers. The Aztecs believed that the success of their crops depended on their ability to maintain balance with the gods and the forces of nature. Farmers would often perform rituals and offer prayers to these gods, asking for rain and fertility in exchange for their labor and dedication. Imagine working on the Chinampas, carefully tending to the crops while the sound of the water lapping against the floating gardens fills the air. You pause for a moment to offer a prayer to Tlaloc, thanking him for the rain that nourishes the crops. As you continue working, the smell of damp earth and growing plants surrounds you. You can hear the rustling of the reeds in the breeze and feel the soft pool of the water beneath your feet. The work is hard, but the connection to the earth and the gods is palpable. The tools in your hands are more than just implements for farming. They are instruments of reverence and respect, connecting you to both the land and the divine. The success of the Chinampa system was not only due to the ingenuity of the tools and techniques used, but also to the way it created a sustainable, self-sufficient farming environment. The floating gardens were a model of efficient land use, allowing farmers to maximize crop yields in a limited space. By creating the Chinampas on the lake, the Aztecs were able to take advantage of the natural resources around them without depleting them. The system also made use of organic waste, recycling materials, and creating a closed-loop agricultural process. This system was incredibly sustainable, allowing the Aztecs to maintain a stable food supply and feed the large population of Tenochtitlan. But, as with many great innovations, the Chinampa system was not without its challenges. The delicate balance between water levels, soil conditions, and crop management required constant attention and care. Over time, the canals and waterways that supported the Chinampas became silted, and the growth of Tenochtitlan put pressure on the system. Some historians argue that the eventual decline of the Aztec Empire was partly due to the degradation of the Chinampa system and other agricultural practices, as they became increasingly unsustainable under the weight of the empire's growth. However, the legacy of the Chinampa system lives on in the modern farming practices of Mexico. Today, some farmers still use versions of the Chinampa system to cultivate crops in the region. As we think about the importance of the Chinampa system, it's clear that it was more than just a tool for survival. It was a testament to the Aztecs' understanding of their environment and their ability to work in harmony with the land. The tools and techniques used to create and maintain the Chinampas were not just practical, they were a reflection of the Aztecs' deep reverence for nature and the divine forces that governed it. Imagine now, standing at the edge of a modern-day Chinampa, watching as the sun sets over the still waters. The crops are growing tall and strong, nurtured by the same techniques that sustained the Aztecs for centuries. The work continues, just as it did long ago, linking the present to the past in a timeless cycle of farming, respect, and connection to the land. Continuing from the impressive ingenuity of the Chinampas, let's now step into another essential and somewhat humble part of Aztec farming, the tools used for planting and harvesting maize, the staple crop that sustained the empire. When you think about Aztec agriculture, maize is likely the first crop that comes to mind. It was not only a major part of their diet, but also a central aspect of their culture, religion, and economy. The tools used to plant and harvest maize were just as essential as the floating gardens and irrigation systems we've already discussed, and they reveal a lot about the Aztecs' relationship with the land and the cycles of nature. Picture yourself in an Aztec maize field. The air is warm and thick with the scent of rich soil, and the golden stalks of maize sway gently in the breeze. The Aztec farmers, armed with their trusty tools, are busy planting or harvesting. One of the most important tools for this task was the koa, a simple but highly effective digging stick used to plant seeds and prepare the soil. The koa was a versatile tool, essential for tilling the soil, digging holes for seeds, and clearing debris from the fields. It was essentially the Aztec version of a hoe, and while it may seem basic, it was designed to meet the specific needs of Aztec farming. The blade was usually made from obsidian or another sharp material, ensuring it was durable and effective. Now, imagine yourself in the field, gripping the koa, which fits snugly in your hand, its sharp edge biting into the soil as you prepare the ground for maize planting. You push it down into the earth, creating holes in neat rows. The rhythm of your movements is fluid, almost meditative. Each hole you dig is a promise to the gods and to the people who will rely on this crop. Maize was not only essential for feeding the empire, it was sacred, representing life itself. With every seed you plant, you're participating in a ritual that spans generations. Historians still argue whether the planting of maize was solely practical or if it was deeply intertwined with the spiritual and ceremonial life of the Aztecs. It's likely that both elements played a part, with the koa being used as a practical tool for planting and also symbolizing the connection between the farmer and the gods of the earth. Once the maize had been planted, the next important task was the harvest, and for that, the Aztecs used another set of specialized tools. One of the most notable harvest tools was the topasli, a kind of curved knife that was used to cut through the tough stalks of maize. The topasli was an essential tool for Aztec farmers, as it allowed them to harvest maize quickly and efficiently. The curved blade, made from obsidian, was perfectly suited to slicing through the maize stalks without damaging the valuable kernels. Imagine the scene now. You're standing in a field of ripe maize, the sun high overhead. With your topasli in hand, you move through the rows, cutting stalks with swift, practiced movements. The sound of the knife slicing through the stalks is sharp, but the reward is immediate. The maize is ready, and your hard work is paying off. Each cut is a reminder of the importance of this crop, not just as food, but as a symbol of survival and sustenance for the entire empire. While harvesting maize was essential, it wasn't the only task that kept Aztec farmers busy. There was also the task of ensuring that the fields remained fertile and productive year after year. For this, the Aztecs used a variety of tools to manage the soil and maintain the health of their crops. Tools like the maguey spade, which we discussed earlier, were used to help turn the soil and prepare it for the next planting cycle. But it wasn't just about physical tools. The Aztecs also understood the importance of crop rotation and the need to maintain soil health. This knowledge, combined with the right tools, allowed the Aztecs to grow a variety of crops in the same fields over multiple seasons. The work of the farmer, it seems, was never done. The Aztecs were keenly aware of the delicate balance between the land, the crops, and the gods. They didn't just rely on the tools in their hands. They also relied on rituals and prayers to ensure that their crops would thrive. The maize harvest, in particular, was often accompanied by ceremonies dedicated to Siniotl, the god of maize. In these ceremonies, farmers would offer thanks for the harvest and pray for future success. The koa, the topasli, and all the other tools used in the fields were not just seen as instruments of labor. They were part of a larger, sacred process that connected the farmers to the divine. In this way, farming wasn't just a means of survival for the Aztecs, it was an act of devotion. The tools they used to plant, harvest, and maintain their crops were not just tools, they were sacred instruments that allowed them to participate in the divine order of the world. Every harvest, every planting season, was a reminder of the delicate balance between human effort and divine will. Now, as you stand in the middle of an Aztec maize field, with your hands on the tools of the trade, you realize that you are not just a farmer, you are a part of a grand tradition. You are tending the land that sustains the people, ensuring that the gods remain pleased and that the empire continues to thrive. It's hard work, but it's meaningful work. The tools you hold in your hands are more than just instruments, they are a link between the earth, the people, and the divine. As we continue our journey through the world of Aztec agricultural tools, let's shift focus to another essential part of their farming system: water management. If there's one thing the Aztecs understood, it was the importance of water. They built their entire empire on an island, surrounded by lakes, and their survival depended on their ability to control and direct water to their fields. To achieve this, the Aztecs relied on a series of ingenious tools and techniques that allowed them to create an agricultural system capable of sustaining a growing empire. One of the most vital tools for water management in Aztec farming was the atlacatl. This tool, which was essentially a wooden device used to divert water, was crucial for controlling the flow from the lakes and canals surrounding Tenochtitlan. Imagine walking through the canals of Tenochtitlan, where narrow, stone-lined waterways crisscross the city. You stand by a canal, the soft murmur of the flowing water in your ears, as you grasp the atlacatl, a simple, yet powerful, wooden tool designed to regulate the flow of water into the fields. The atlacatl was used to adjust the water levels of the canals, ensuring that fields were irrigated without becoming flooded. Farmers would position it in the waterway to direct the flow toward their crops, allowing them to provide just the right amount of moisture for the plants. Historians still argue whether this was a general-purpose tool used throughout the empire or a more specialized device used primarily in the Chinampa system. The floating gardens we talked about earlier. What's clear, though, is that the Aztecs had a sophisticated understanding of water management, one that was central to their agricultural success. It's incredible to think about how the Aztecs, working with a system of natural resources that many would consider difficult to manage, were able to use tools like the atlacatl to regulate their environment and make it work for them. The tool wasn't just for everyday use, it was an instrument of survival, a critical part of an irrigation system that allowed the Aztecs to grow crops on an island surrounded by water. With their advanced knowledge of hydraulics, they were able to maximize the productivity of their crops while maintaining the delicate balance of their water resources. Imagine standing there, the atlacatl in your hands, the cool water running between your fingers as you redirect it to your crops. You're not just managing water, you're sustaining life, ensuring that the fields are nourished and that the gods of rain and fertility will bless your harvest. The work is methodical, and the connection to the land is palpable. As you shift the tool, you can feel the weight of the responsibility and the importance of maintaining balance in this delicate ecosystem. But it wasn't just the atlacatl that was used for water management. The Aztecs also relied on a series of canals and aqueducts to bring water into their city and distribute it to the surrounding agricultural areas. These canals were an incredible feat of engineering, and they were essential for irrigating crops, providing water for drinking, and even serving as transportation routes for goods and people. The Aztecs' ability to manipulate and control water was one of the key factors that allowed their civilization to thrive in an otherwise challenging environment. The canals themselves were maintained using a variety of tools, ranging from simple wooden paddles to specialized brushes for cleaning the waterway. These tools were used to clear debris, ensure that water flowed freely, and prevent the buildup of silt, which could clog the canals and make them less effective. Farmers and workers would regularly maintain the canals, ensuring that the flow of water remained consistent and efficient. This constant attention to the waterways was vital for the survival of the crops, and it shows the incredible organization and discipline of the Aztec people. Imagine the labor involved in maintaining these waterways. As you walk along the canal, you notice workers using paddles and brushes to clear the debris, their movements synchronized, almost like a ritual. The sound of the tools scraping against the stone echoes in the air as the workers maintain the flow of water. It's hard, physical work, but it's necessary work. Without the canals, there would be no crops, no sustenance, and no empire. It's a reminder of the interconnectedness of Aztec life, how every tool, every task, and every effort was linked to the well-being of the entire community. The Aztecs' ability to manage water so effectively was not just a technological achievement, it was a cultural one. Water was a sacred element in Aztec belief, and the tools used to manage it were seen as instruments of divine intervention. The gods of rain, like Tlaloc, were called upon during times of drought, and their favor was sought through ritual offerings. Water wasn't just a resource to be controlled. It was a gift from the gods, and the Aztecs worked to maintain a harmonious relationship with it. The tools they used to manage water, then, were not just practical, they were sacred. Now, let's step back from the canals and irrigation systems and look at another key element of Aztec farming, the role of labor in agriculture. Aztec society was highly stratified, and the work of farming was often carried out by a combination of farmers, slaves, and tributes from conquered peoples. The tools we've discussed so far, whether it's the koa for planting, the topasli for harvesting, or the atlacatl for managing water, were tools that were used across different levels of society. But the labor involved was often grueling, and it was not just the farmers who worked the fields. In this highly organized society, farmers had specialized tools, but they also had specialized tasks. The labor of the fields was carefully divided, with each worker focusing on specific parts of the farming cycle. Imagine walking into the fields and seeing different groups of workers, each with their own tool, their own task. Some are using the koa to prepare the soil, while others are harvesting crops with the topasli. The scene is one of coordinated effort, each person working in unison to bring in the harvest. As we continue exploring the intricate world of Aztec farming tools and techniques, let's shift focus to one of the most innovative agricultural practices in Aztec society, the use of chinampas, or floating gardens. These man-made, water-based farming plots were a marvel of engineering, created by Aztec farmers to maximize the available land in their island city of Tenochtitlan. These floating gardens were not just a testament to the Aztecs' ingenuity, they were a symbol of their ability to adapt, innovate, and thrive in a challenging environment. Imagine yourself standing on one of the chinampas, surrounded by water and the lush greenery of crops growing on the raised beds. The scent of damp earth fills the air, and you hear the soft ripple of water as it laps against the sides of the chinampa. The crops you're tending, maize, beans, and squash, are thriving in the fertile soil that has been carefully nurtured. The tool you're holding is a simple digging stick, but its effectiveness is apparent. You use it to maintain the balance of soil, water, and nutrients on the chinampa, ensuring that the crops continue to grow. The chinampa system was built by sticking willow trees into the shallow waters of Lake Texcoco, weaving them together to form a framework. Then, layers of mud, plant material, and organic matter were added to create a solid platform for planting. The result was a highly fertile and efficient farming system that allowed the Aztecs to grow crops in a space that would otherwise be unusable. This agricultural method allowed for year-round farming, maximizing the land's potential and providing a steady food supply for the growing population of Tenochtitlan. But the chinampa system wasn't just about practicality, it was a vital part of Aztec society and culture. The floating gardens were integral to the way the Aztecs viewed their relationship with the land. Farmers saw the act of creating and maintaining a chinampa as a sacred task. By manipulating the environment in such an intimate way, they were participating in a process that transcended the physical world. It was a spiritual practice, a way of showing respect to the gods of fertility and agriculture. Tools used on the chinampas had to be specialized for the unique environment. The koa was often used to dig and aerate the soil, making it suitable for planting. The farmers would also use wooden paddles to move the water, ensuring that the crops were properly irrigated. One of the most fascinating aspects of this system was the way it incorporated both water management and soil fertility in a sustainable cycle. The Aztecs used the organic material in the water to fertilize their crops, creating a system that was not only efficient but environmentally sustainable. Historians still debate how widespread the Chinampa system was throughout the Aztec Empire. Some suggest that it was primarily used in Tenochtitlan, where the conditions of the lake provided the ideal environment for the floating gardens. Others argue that the system was adapted and used in other parts of Mesoamerica. What is clear, however, is that the Chinampas were a brilliant innovation that allowed the Aztecs to sustain a population that could have easily outgrown the land available. This system helped the Aztecs feed their people while also preserving their natural resources. But it wasn't just the tools and techniques used in the Chinampa system that were impressive. It was the way the Aztecs integrated the floating gardens into their daily life. The Chinampas were a hub of activity, with farmers working together to cultivate the land, maintain the waterways, and harvest crops. It wasn't just about food production, it was about community. The collective effort involved in maintaining the Chinampas made them a key part of Aztec social and cultural life. Imagine the scene now. The sun is beginning to set over the lake, casting a golden glow across the Chinampas. Farmers are finishing their day's work, their hands covered in the rich, dark soil of the floating gardens. They gather in small groups to share stories and laughter, taking pride in the crops they've helped to grow. The harvest is bountiful, but it's the sense of community, the bond between the farmers and the land, that makes the work meaningful. The tools they use, the koa, the wooden paddles, the atlacatli, are more than just instruments. They are a link between the past and the future, a connection to the gods, and a symbol of the dedication and hard work of the Aztec people. As we look at the legacy of the Chinampa system, it's clear that this agricultural innovation wasn't just about feeding the people, it was about sustaining an empire. The Chinampas allowed the Aztecs to thrive in an environment that, at first glance, might seem inhospitable, but through their ingenuity and their deep connection to the land, the Aztecs turned a challenging landscape into one of the most advanced agricultural systems in the ancient world. The Chinampa system is a reminder that the relationship between humans and the environment is a delicate balance. It's not just about using the land to meet our needs, it's about working with the land, understanding its rhythms, and respecting the resources it provides. The tools the Aztecs used to cultivate their floating gardens were not just practical, they were symbolic of this balance. Each tool, each act of labor, and each crop harvested was a part of a greater cycle of life and death, of human effort and divine favor. The legacy of the Chinampas continues today. In parts of Mexico, farmers still use the principles of this ancient system to grow crops in wetland areas. The Chinampas are a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the Aztec people, and they offer valuable lessons for modern agriculture. As we look to the future of food production and sustainability, the Chinampas remind us that innovation and respect for the land can coexist, creating systems that benefit both the environment and the people who depend on it. Now that we've seen how the Aztecs developed and maintained their unique Chinampa farming system, let's take a moment to explore another fascinating aspect of their agricultural world, the tools they used to handle the delicate and vital crop that was maize. Maize was not just a food source for the Aztecs. It was the foundation of their diet, their rituals, and even their economy. For the Aztecs, the tools used to grow and harvest maize were just functional. They were deeply symbolic, connecting the people to their gods and to the cycles of nature that governed their lives. Imagine yourself walking through a vast field of maize. The tall, golden stalks stretch as far as the eye can see, swaying gently in the wind. The sun is high, casting long shadows over the land, and the air is thick with the earthy scent of the soil. You are an Aztec farmer, standing at the edge of a field that will feed an entire community. In your hand, you hold one of the most important tools in Aztec farming, the koa. This simple, yet powerful, digging stick was the primary tool for planting and preparing the soil. It had a sharp blade made from obsidian or another tough material, perfect for breaking the earth and planting the maize seeds. The koa was used not only to prepare the soil, but also to create the small holes into which maize seeds were carefully placed. Imagine using this tool day after day, the rhythm of planting etched into your body as you bend down, push the blade into the earth, and plant the seeds that will sustain your people. Every hole dug, every seed planted, is part of a cycle that stretches back to the gods. The Aztecs believed that their labor in the fields was an offering to Tlaloc, the god of rain, and Cineotl, the god of maize. Each tool used in the fields was not just a means to an end. It was part of a sacred act, linking the farmer to the divine forces that governed the growth of the crops. Historians still debate the exact role of tools like the koa in Aztec agriculture. While we know they were essential for soil preparation and planting, some argue that the tools used in Aztec agriculture were far more complex and varied than we often give them credit for. The koa, for example, was not just used for planting. Farmers also used it to weed the fields, to create irrigation channels, and to maintain the balance between the crops and the soil. In this way, the koa wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol of the farmer's relationship to the land. Imagine, for a moment, the importance of this relationship. Every time the Aztec farmer used the koa, it was not just an act of physical labor, it was a ritual, a prayer. The Aztecs believed that the earth itself was alive, a living entity that could be harmed or nourished by the actions of its inhabitants. The koa was not just a tool for breaking the soil. It was a tool for honoring the land and the gods. In this sense, farming was as much about spiritual practice as it was about producing food. But the work didn't end with planting. Once the maize was ready for harvest, the Aztecs relied on another important tool, the topasli. The topasli was a curved knife, often made of obsidian, and it was used to cut the stalks of maize during the harvest. Picture yourself walking through the maize field once again, the air warm and fragrant with the scent of ripening crops. You hold the topasli in your hand, its sharp, gleaming blade ready for the task ahead. With a swift motion, you slice through the thick stalks of maize, collecting the cobs in baskets to be carried back to the village. Each cut you make is a reflection of the balance you've maintained between the earth and the divine, a balance that ensures a successful harvest and a prosperous year. Historians still argue about whether the topasli was used primarily for harvesting maize or whether it had other, more general uses. Some suggest that it was also used for harvesting other crops, like beans or squash, while others point to its significance in ritual ceremonies, where it may have been used to make ceremonial offerings. Whatever its primary use, the topasli was undeniably important in ensuring that the Aztecs could maintain a steady supply of food for their people. It was the tool that helped bring the harvest to life, ensuring that the crops grown with care and reverence would eventually make their way to the tables of the community. Imagine the sense of accomplishment that comes with a successful harvest. The maize is ready, the fields are full, and the work of the season has paid off. The community gathers together to celebrate, sharing in the bounty of the land. The tools that were used to tend the fields, the koa, the topasli, and all the others, are cleaned and stored, ready for the next cycle of planting and harvesting. And in the midst of the celebration, there is a sense of deep gratitude for the tools that made it all possible. These tools are not just instruments of labor. They are symbols of the connection between the people, the land, and the gods. As we reflect on the tools of the Aztec farmers, we see that their role in Aztec society was far greater than simply providing food. These tools were a reflection of the Aztecs' deep respect for the earth and the gods, and they were central to the rituals and practices that sustained the empire. The koa, the topasli, and the other tools used by Aztec farmers were not just instruments of labor. They were sacred tools, imbued with meaning and purpose, that helped maintain the balance between humanity and nature. In the end, the legacy of Aztec farming tools is not just about the physical objects, they are a reminder of a culture that understood the importance of sustainability, community, and respect for the land. The tools may be long gone, but the principles they represented continue to resonate today. As we face the challenges of modern agriculture, we can look back to the Aztecs for inspiration, reminding us that farming is not just about feeding the world, but about honoring the earth and maintaining a balance between human effort and divine favor. As we move forward in our journey through the Aztec agricultural tools and techniques, we can't help But notice the unique connection between the Aztecs and their environment. Their tools were crafted not just for practicality, but with a deep understanding of the land's cycles and rhythms. But beyond the implements used to prepare soil, harvest crops, and manage water, there was one more crucial aspect of their agricultural system that tied everything together: the spiritual and ritualistic practices that governed every step of farming. Agriculture in Aztec society wasn't just about sustenance, it was deeply entwined with their beliefs, and farming tools themselves were sometimes seen as sacred objects. The Aztecs believed that the gods controlled the forces of nature, and thus, the work of the farmers was, in a sense, a continuous act of devotion. Every tool used, every seed planted, and every crop harvested was part of a larger cosmic cycle, and it was understood that if these practices weren't conducted properly, the balance of nature and the empire itself would be threatened. Imagine, for a moment, a busy marketplace in Tenochtitlan, the heart of the Aztec Empire. The air is thick with the scent of freshly harvested maize, beans, and other produce. Farmers are gathered, selling their crops, but they are not just there to trade. Many of them also offer prayers of gratitude for the harvest and seek blessings for the next planting season. Behind every crop sold, there's a spiritual narrative, a connection between the farmer and the gods, a relationship sustained through ritual and respect. In the fields themselves, the work was no less sacred. For example, before the planting of maize, Aztec farmers would often perform a ritual, offering food and flowers to Tlaloc, the god of rain, to ensure that the rains would come at the right time. They would use their tools to dig into the soil, but the soil was considered to be alive, a gift from the earth itself. The act of planting maize, one of the most important crops, was not only a practical task but a ritual act, marking the beginning of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The Aztecs also had a unique way of linking their farming tools to their religious practices. In many cases, tools were believed to be imbued with divine power. When farmers used their koa to till the soil or their topasli to cut maize, it was done with the understanding that they were participating in a larger, divine act of creation. Some tools, particularly those used in rituals, were even dedicated to the gods and were considered sacred. The temolocatl, the tool used for shaping the earth into raised mounds, was another tool closely linked to Aztec spirituality. The act of shaping the soil itself was seen as a reflection of the larger forces of nature. In many ways, it was a physical manifestation of the Aztec belief that humans were responsible for maintaining balance in the universe. The raised mounds that farmers created were not just for practical purposes, they were part of the sacred relationship between the land, the gods, and the people. Historians still debate the extent to which these rituals and spiritual practices were integrated into the everyday work of the farmers. Were the rituals primarily performed by the priests, or were they an integral part of the farming process for everyone? Some suggest that, in the highly stratified Aztec society, the rituals were likely reserved for those who held religious roles, while others argue that they were a shared part of the community's farming practices. Regardless of the specifics, one thing is certain: Aztec agriculture was inseparable from their spiritual beliefs. Imagine now standing in a field, tools in hand, with the sun beginning to set on the horizon. As the day winds down, you pause to offer a prayer to Tlaloc for rain, knowing that the fate of your crops and your people depends on the gods. The tools in your hands are not just for planting. They are extensions of your devotion, your labor, and your respect for the land that sustains you. With each strike of the koa and each cut with the topasli, you are not merely preparing the soil and harvesting the crops. You are participating in a sacred act that has been passed down through generations, ensuring that the gods remain pleased and the crops continue to thrive. This connection between farming and spirituality was essential to Aztec society, and it permeated every aspect of their agricultural system. The tools they used, from the simple koa to the more specialized alacacatli, were not just instruments, they were sacred objects that allowed the farmers to interact with the divine. Each act of farming, whether planting, watering, or harvesting, was a small, sacred ritual that contributed to the larger cosmic order. The Aztec farmers' understanding of their environment was as much spiritual as it was practical. The earth itself was a living entity, and every tool, every action, was a way of nurturing the relationship between humans and the natural world. As we reflect on this, it's clear that the tools used by Aztec farmers were not simply objects of utility. They were part of a deeply interconnected system of labor, nature, and spirituality. As we move further through our exploration of Aztec farming, it's fascinating to think about how these spiritual and practical elements came together to create a farming system that was not only efficient, but also deeply meaningful. The tools, the rituals, and the land itself were all bound together in a delicate dance of respect and reverence, a dance that allowed the Aztec Empire to thrive for centuries. Every harvest, every planting season, was part of this ongoing relationship, ensuring that the empire remained fed, prosperous, and spiritually balanced. As we continue to explore the fascinating world of Aztec farming tools, we now shift our attention to another aspect of their agricultural system that was not only functional, but also played a significant role in shaping their culture. Tools for managing the sacred crops of the Aztecs. Beyond maize, the Aztecs grew a variety of other crops that were central to their diet, economy, and religious rituals. These crops, including beans, squash, and chili, were cultivated with the same care and reverence as maize. And just like the tools used for maize farming, the tools for harvesting and processing these crops were essential to the success of the Aztec agricultural system. One of the crops that played an important role in Aztec life was beans. Beans were a major source of protein in the Aztec diet, and their cultivation was just as crucial to the empire's survival as maize. To tend to these crops, Aztec farmers used tools like the maguey spade and the koa, tools that were versatile enough to manage a variety of crops. The maguey spade, in particular, was important for clearing the ground, digging holes, and aerating the soil for beans. The koa was used to plant and prepare the soil, allowing the beans to grow in harmony with the other crops on the chinampas or the terraced fields. Imagine yourself in a bean field on a warm, sunny day. The soil is rich and dark beneath your feet, and the air is filled with the earthy scent of the crops growing all around you. With your koa in hand, you carefully dig small holes in the soil, planting the beans with precision. You move from one hole to the next, the rhythm of your work creating a sense of calm and purpose. Each hole you dig is a small, sacred act, just as important as planting maize, for beans, like maize, were a gift from the gods. As you work, you can't help but feel a deep connection to the earth, knowing that the crops you are tending to will nourish your people and sustain the empire. Historians still argue whether beans were cultivated as a primary crop in Aztec society, as maize seems to have taken precedence in most agricultural records. However, it is clear that beans were vital to the Aztec diet, and their cultivation was essential to ensuring a balanced and sustainable food supply. The tools used to manage these crops, tools like the koa, maguey spade, and topasli, were essential to the success of bean farming. The Aztecs didn't just grow crops, they grew a system of interconnected plants that complemented each other, creating a self-sustaining cycle of food production. This holistic approach to agriculture was key to their ability to sustain a dense population. But beans weren't the only crop that required specialized tools. The Aztecs also grew chili, another staple in their diet, which added spice and flavor to many of their dishes. Chili was also used for medicinal purposes, as it was believed to have healing properties. The cultivation of chili required careful attention, and the Aztecs used a variety of tools to tend to these crops. Farmers used smaller knives to carefully harvest the chili pods from the plants, ensuring that the peppers were not damaged during the harvest. The topasli was often used for this task, with its curved blade perfectly suited for cutting the delicate pods without harming the plant. As you imagine yourself in an Aztec chili field, the heat of the day begins to rise. You stand amidst rows of vibrant green chili plants, each one bursting with color as the peppers ripen on the vine. With your tapasli in hand, you carefully cut the ripe peppers from their stems, placing them gently into woven baskets. The air is filled with the spicy scent of the peppers, and the rhythm of your movements becomes almost meditative. The tapasli is an extension of your hand, working in harmony with the earth and the plants to harvest the bounty of the land. Historians continue to debate how integral chili was to the everyday diet of the Aztecs. Some suggest that it was a luxury item used mostly by the elite, while others argue that it was a staple for both commoners and nobility. Regardless of its exact role in the diet, chili was undoubtedly an important crop for the Aztecs, and the tools used to cultivate it were just as essential as those used for maize or beans. As we reflect on the tools used for cultivating beans and chili, it's clear that Aztec agriculture was not just about producing food, it was about creating balance and harmony with nature. The tools the farmers used, from the koa to the tapasli, were essential to ensuring that the crops were not only productive but also grown in a way that respected the earth and the gods. Each tool, each crop, and each harvest was part of a larger cosmic order, ensuring that the Aztec Empire could continue to thrive. The Aztecs were not just farmers, they were stewards of the land, carefully maintaining the balance between human effort and divine will. The tools they used were not just instruments of labor. They were part of a sacred process that linked the farmers to the gods and the earth. The connection between agriculture, spirituality, and daily life was what made Aztec farming so unique, and it's what allowed the Aztec Empire to flourish in a challenging environment. Imagine the cycle of farming in Aztec society. Each season begins with the planting of maize, beans, and chili, tools in hand, prayers on lips, and respect for the land in the heart. With each harvest, the tools are cleaned and stored, ready for the next cycle. The work continues, generation after generation, as the Aztecs honor their gods and maintain the balance between the earth and the heavens. As we continue to explore the tools of Aztec agriculture, we now turn our attention to an important crop that was just as vital to the Aztecs as maize: cacao. The cacao tree produced the beans that were used to make zocolatl, a rich chocolate beverage enjoyed by the Aztec elite. Cacao was not only a valuable commodity, it was also a sacred food that was offered to the gods and used in religious ceremonies. The cultivation of cacao required specialized tools, just like the other crops we've discussed, and it played a crucial role in both the economy and spirituality of Aztec society. Imagine yourself walking through a lush cacao grove, the air thick with the rich scent of cacao pods ripening on the trees. You can hear the sound of the leaves rustling in the wind, and the occasional rustle of animals hidden in the underbrush. The trees are tall and sturdy, with thick trunks and branches heavy with fruit. The cacao pods, with their vibrant colors, hang like jewels among the dark green leaves, waiting to be harvested. In your hands, you hold a specialized tool, the tapasli, a curved knife made of obsidian, designed specifically for harvesting cacao pods. The tapasli is sharp and precise, allowing you to slice through the tough outer skin of the pods without damaging the precious beans inside. You move carefully, slicing each pod from the tree and placing it gently in your basket. The work is delicate and requires skill, as the pods are fragile and the beans inside must be harvested without harm. Historians still debate the exact methods the Aztecs used to harvest cacao. Some believe that the process of harvesting cacao was a ceremonial act, with offerings made to the gods before the harvest began. Others argue that cacao was simply harvested as a commodity, similar to how we harvest any crop today. Regardless of the exact practices, it's clear that cacao was an important crop in Aztec society, and the tools used to harvest it were just as significant. Cacao played a central role in Aztec economy and culture, and its cultivation was intricately linked to religion. The beans were used to make zocolatl, a thick, frothy drink that was enjoyed by the elite. This drink was often flavored with chili and vanilla, and it was believed to be a gift from the gods. Cacao beans were so valuable that they were used as currency, exchanged in markets and used to pay tribute to the emperor. The tools used to harvest cacao were thus not just instruments for labor. They were tied to a sacred and economic system that ensured the continued prosperity of the empire. Imagine now the ritual that surrounds the harvesting of cacao. As you cut the pods from the trees, you offer a silent prayer to the gods, asking for their blessings on the crop. The cacao you harvest will not only provide nourishment for the people, but also serve as an offering to the gods, ensuring their favor. In this way, the harvest becomes not just a physical task, but a spiritual one, a connection between the farmer and the divine forces that govern the world. As we think about the tools used for cacao farming, it's important to recognize that they were part of a larger system of agricultural tools that were all interconnected. The koa, the tapasli, and other farming implements were used not just for the cultivation of crops. They were part of a larger agricultural system that was in constant harmony with the environment. Each tool had its purpose, and each tool played a role in maintaining the balance between human effort, nature, and the gods. The cacao harvest was just one part of the Aztec farming cycle, but it speaks to the larger story of how the Aztecs viewed their relationship with the land. Every tool used, whether for planting, harvesting, or managing water, was seen as an extension of their devotion to the earth and to the gods. By using these tools with care and reverence, Aztec farmers were able to sustain their empire and maintain their connection to the divine. But cacao wasn't just important to the Aztecs for its economic or ceremonial value. It also had a social aspect. The process of preparing and drinking zocolatl was a social ritual. It was often served during feasts, and its consumption was an important aspect of Aztec culture. The drink was enjoyed by the elite, but it was also shared with commoners during religious ceremonies. Cacao, like many other crops, was not just about survival. It was about community, tradition, and a shared connection to the gods. Now, as we step away from the cacao groves and think about the bigger picture, we can see that Aztec agriculture was not just about growing food. It was about cultivating a system of life that connected every aspect of Aztec society. The tools, the crops, the rituals, and the community were all interwoven into a complex system that allowed the Aztecs to thrive in a challenging environment. The tools used for cultivating cacao, much like those used for other crops, were integral to the Aztec worldview. They weren't just for planting and harvesting. They were instruments that allowed the farmers to participate in a sacred process, ensuring that the crops they grew would nourish not only the people, but also the gods. The legacy of Aztec farming tools lives on in many ways, from the agricultural practices that are still used today to the cultural traditions that continue to shape Mexican identity. The Aztecs understood the importance of respecting the land and maintaining harmony with the natural world. The tools they created, from the simple koa to the specialized tapasli, were not just practical. They were a reflection of the Aztec philosophy of balance and interconnectedness. As we look to the future of agriculture, we can draw lessons from the Aztecs. Their tools were a reflection of their understanding of the earth as a living, sacred entity, and they worked to maintain that balance through their practices and rituals. By reconnecting with the land and using tools that respect the natural world, we too can build a more sustainable future for generations to come. As we continue to explore the fascinating agricultural practices of the Aztecs, let's turn our attention to the tools used for cultivating and maintaining the crops that were central to their economy and spirituality. The chinampas may have been the backbone of Aztec agriculture, but it was the tools used to tend to the crops on these floating gardens and the surrounding fields that truly made the empire thrive. The Aztecs understood that agriculture was not just about growing food. It was about maintaining the balance between the land, the people, and the gods. Every tool they used, from the simple koa to the intricate maguey spade, played a role in ensuring that the crops flourished and the harvest was bountiful. Let's now imagine standing on the edge of a chinampa, the floating garden that has been carefully constructed to maximize space and fertility. You can hear the sound of water lapping against the edges of the garden, the scent of damp earth mixing with the fragrance of freshly growing maize and beans. The koa is in your hands, the sharp blade ready to be used to loosen the soil and prepare it for planting. The rhythmic motion of using the koa is almost meditative, a repetitive task that connects you to the earth with every strike. The tool is simple, yet it carries with it the weight of centuries of agricultural tradition. The koa was the workhorse of Aztec farming. It was a versatile tool, capable of being used for planting, weeding, and even creating irrigation channels. The sharp blade, made from obsidian or flint, was perfect for cutting through the soil, allowing the farmer to plant seeds and cultivate the land. The koa was used on the Chinampas as well as in the dry land of the empire, making it a tool that was essential to the success of Aztec agriculture. The role of the koa in Aztec farming wasn't just practical, it was also deeply spiritual. As with all Aztec agricultural practices, the work of the farmer was seen as an offering to the gods. The Aztecs believed that Tlaloc, the god of rain, and Cineotl, the god of maize, played a direct role in the growth of crops. The use of the koa wasn't just a physical act, it was a ritualistic one, tying the work of the farmer to the cosmic forces that governed the world. Each strike of the koa into the soil was a prayer, a request for the gods to bless the land with fertility and abundance. Historians have debated the exact spiritual significance of tools like the koa. Was it simply a tool for agricultural labor, or was it a sacred instrument used in the service of the gods? Some scholars argue that the koa was seen as a divine instrument, connected to the earth and the gods, while others suggest that it was more of a functional tool that was imbued with symbolic meaning rather than actual divine power. Regardless, the act of using the koa was tied to the larger spiritual and cultural context of Aztec farming. The tools weren't just about cultivating crops, they were about maintaining the relationship between humanity and the divine. Imagine, for a moment, the hard work involved in maintaining a Chinampa field. You've used your koa to plant maize, beans, and squash, but now you need to ensure that the water levels are correct, the crops are irrigated, and the soil is fertile. For this, the Aztecs used a variety of tools designed to manage water flow and maintain the fertility of the soil. One such tool was the atlacacatli, a wooden implement used to divert water from the canals into the fields. The atlacacatli was used to adjust the flow of water to the crops, ensuring that they received just the right amount of moisture. It was a simple tool, but it played a crucial role in the success of the Chinampa system. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a canal, the atlacacatli in your hands. You carefully position the tool to direct the flow of water to your crops, watching as the water gently flows into the soil, nourishing the plants. The work is meticulous, but it's essential to maintaining the balance between the land, the water, and the crops. The Aztecs understood that water management was a key component of successful farming, and tools like the atlacacatli allowed them to harness the natural resources around them in a way that was both efficient and sustainable. As you continue to tend to the crops on your Chinampa, you feel a deep sense of connection to the land. Every tool you use, from the koa to the atlacacatli, is an extension of your labor and your reverence for the earth. The Aztecs believed that the act of farming was not just about growing food, it was about honoring the gods and maintaining the balance between humanity and nature. The tools were not just practical, they were sacred instruments that allowed the farmers to participate in the divine cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The use of tools in Aztec agriculture was more than just a means of survival, it was a way of life. The tools were symbols of the relationship between the people, the land, and the gods. Each tool, whether it was the koa, the atlacacatli, or the tepasli, had a specific purpose, but it also carried with it a spiritual meaning. The act of using these tools was an offering, a prayer for a bountiful harvest and the continued prosperity of the empire. As we reflect on the tools of Aztec agriculture, we see that they were not just instruments of labor, they were instruments of connection. They connected the farmers to the land, to the gods, and to the community. The work was hard, but it was meaningful, and in the end, the success of Aztec agriculture was not just about producing food, it was about maintaining the harmony between humanity and the earth, ensuring that the crops grew in abundance and that the empire continued to thrive. As we delve further into the intricacies of Aztec agriculture, it's essential to consider the role of tools in the broader social and economic structure of Aztec society. While we've already discussed the functional and spiritual aspects of agricultural tools, we must now look at how these tools shape the daily lives of the Aztec people and their relationships with each other. The tools we've explored so far, whether the koa for planting, the atlacatl for water management, or the tapasli for harvesting, were essential for the work of farming. But they also represented something much larger, a collective effort that connected individual farmers to the larger agricultural community. The Aztecs had a highly organized society, and farming was no exception. The empire was divided into various regions, each with its own agricultural priorities and needs. These regions worked together, and the agricultural tools used were part of a complex system of labor, trade, and ritual that kept the entire society running smoothly. The tools themselves were not just used by individual farmers, but were also passed down from one generation to the next, ensuring that the knowledge and skills of Aztec agriculture were preserved and improved upon over time. Imagine yourself walking through the bustling marketplaces of Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire. The air is filled with the scent of fresh produce, and the sounds of traders haggling and the chatter of the people create a vibrant atmosphere. Farmers from the surrounding regions bring their harvests to sell in the market, and as you watch them unload their goods, you can see the tools they've used to cultivate their crops. The koa, the tapasli, the magui spade, and even the smaller tools like knives and sickles, all of them have been used to produce the food that sustains the people of the empire. These tools, though simple in design, were also a sign of the skill and craftsmanship that went into their creation. Aztec farmers didn't just rely on their labor. They relied on the tools they had to make that labor more efficient. The koa, for example, was not just a stick with a sharp end. It was a finely crafted tool that required careful attention to detail. The handle was often made from wood that was durable and comfortable to hold, while the blade was sharpened to the perfect angle for cutting through soil. Each tool, from the smallest to the largest, was crafted with precision and care, ensuring that it would last through the seasons and help the farmers complete their tasks. In Aztec society, the division of labor was a critical factor in the success of the agricultural system. Farmers were organized into groups, and each group had a specific role to play. Some groups were responsible for planting and harvesting crops, while others focused on maintaining the canals and irrigation systems. Still, other groups were tasked with tending to the sacred chinampas or managing the crops that would be offered to the gods. Each group of farmers had its own specialized tools, and each farmer was expected to know how to use those tools with skill and precision. But it wasn't just about the physical labor. Tools also played a significant role in the social fabric of Aztec farming communities. Farmers often worked together in communal groups, sharing their tools and knowledge to ensure that everyone was successful. This sense of community and cooperation was essential to the success of Aztec agriculture. The work of one farmer didn't just benefit them, it benefited the entire community. Farmers would often come together to share resources, exchange seeds, and offer advice. They were bound by a common goal to provide for their families, their neighbors, and their empire. This communal aspect of Aztec farming was also reflected in the rituals and ceremonies that took place throughout the agricultural cycle. The tools used in these rituals were as important as the crops themselves. For example, the koa and tapasli might be used in ceremonies dedicated to the gods of agriculture. These tools were not just instruments of labor. They were part of the spiritual practices that ensured the fertility of the land and the success of the harvest. Historians continue to debate the extent to which Aztec farming was organized on a communal level. Some argue that farming was highly individualized, with each family responsible for its own plot of land. Others suggest that the community worked together more closely, pooling their resources and labor to create a more collective agricultural system. Regardless of the exact structure, it's clear that Aztec farming was a highly organized, cooperative effort that relied on the use of specialized tools to ensure success. Now, Let's imagine what it would be like to work in such a cooperative farming system. You're part of a group of farmers who work together to plant and harvest crops, share tools, and care for the land. The sun is high in the sky, and you're standing in the middle of a large field, the hoe in your hand, as you dig small holes for planting maize. The air is warm, and the rhythm of your work is almost meditative. You're not just planting seeds for yourself, you're planting them for the community. The food you grow will be shared, traded, and consumed by those around you. It's a humbling thought, knowing that the work you're doing will feed an entire population. As the day continues, you take a break with your fellow farmers, sitting under the shade of a tree, sharing food and stories. The tools you've used all day are set aside, but they are never far from your mind. They're more than just instruments, they are symbols of the work you do, the community you're part of, and the sacred bond you share with the land. The tools used in Aztec agriculture were not just about efficiency, they were part of a system that tied individuals to their community and to the divine. The work was difficult, but it was meaningful. The tools used in the fields were extensions of the people who used them, and in turn, the people who used them were extensions of the earth itself. As we reflect on the role of tools in Aztec agriculture, it's clear that they were far more than just instruments of labor. They were part of a larger system that intertwined the spiritual, social, and economic aspects of Aztec society. From the communal effort of planting maize with the koa to the sacred harvest with the tapasli, each tool had a role in sustaining not just the physical needs of the people, but the cultural and spiritual needs of the empire. As we continue our exploration of Aztec agricultural tools, it's time to step back and reflect on how these tools not only served practical purposes, but also played a role in the larger system of social and political organization within the Aztec Empire. Aztec agriculture was at the heart of the empire's success, and the tools used in farming were key to ensuring that the society remained stable and prosperous. But these tools weren't just used by individual farmers, they were part of a larger, organized system that involved tribute, trade, and the contributions of multiple classes within Aztec society. Imagine the vast fields of maize, beans, and squash stretching across the Valley of Mexico. These crops weren't just grown for local consumption, they were vital to sustaining the entire empire. The agricultural output of the empire was distributed through a complex system of trade and tribute, where farmers, especially those in the surrounding regions, would contribute a portion of their harvest to the rulers of Tenochtitlan in exchange for protection and goods. The tools they used to cultivate these crops were not just personal possessions. They were part of the machinery that kept the empire functioning. Picture yourself as a farmer in one of the distant regions outside Tenochtitlan. You work long hours, tilling the soil with your koa, harvesting maize with your tapasli, and ensuring that the irrigation system runs smoothly with your atlacacatli. Every year, you give a portion of your crop to the empire as tribute. The tools you use help to maintain the health of your crops, but they also serve a larger purpose. They allow you to fulfill your role in a system that feeds the entire Aztec Empire. Your work, though seemingly humble, is part of a greater effort that keeps the social and political wheels of the empire turning. The system of tribute was a key part of Aztec agricultural organization. Farmers were required to give a portion of their harvest to the nobility or the emperor, who in turn redistributed the goods throughout the empire. The crops grown with the help of tools like the koa and tapasli were essential to sustaining not just the farmers themselves, but the entire population. The tools allowed the farmers to grow enough food to feed their families, provide for the warriors, and support the elite. In a sense, these tools were the lifeblood of the empire, enabling the Aztec rulers to maintain power and stability through the control of agricultural production. Historians still debate the exact nature of Aztec tribute and trade. Was it a system based solely on the need for sustenance, or was it a way to maintain control over conquered territories? Some argue that the tribute system was a means of ensuring loyalty from the provinces, while others believe it was simply a practical solution to feed the large population of the empire. Regardless of the political motives, It's clear that the agricultural tools used in the field were essential for ensuring the flow of tribute to the capital. Without the efficient use of tools like the koa and tapasli, it's unlikely that the Aztecs would have been able to sustain such a large, centralized system. But it wasn't just about feeding the empire, it was also about maintaining the balance of power. The tools of agriculture were integral to the economy, but they were also linked to the social structure of Aztec society. The farmers who used these tools were typically from the lower classes, while the elite controlled the distribution of the crops. The farmers, though essential to the empire's survival, had a lower social status, and their labor was often seen as a form of tribute. Their tools were their means of participating in the larger political and economic systems of the empire, but they were also symbols of the division between the classes. Imagine, for a moment, the life of an Aztec farmer who works tirelessly in the fields, using the koa to plant crops, the tapasli to harvest, and the atlacatl to manage water. His labor is essential to the survival of the empire. Yet he doesn't see the fruits of his labor beyond his immediate family. He gives a portion of the harvest to the empire as tribute, and in return, he receives protection and access to goods from the capital. The tools in his hands are not just instruments of labor, they are also reminders of his role in the larger system. As you stand in the field, the weight of the tools in your hands feels heavy, not just with the physical labor, but with the responsibility of being part of something much larger. The crops you cultivate will feed not only your family, but also the warriors, the nobles, and the rulers of Tenochtitlan. The tools you use, the koa, the tapasli, and the atlacatl, are the means by which you fulfill your duty to the empire. These tools are your connection to the gods, your community, and your rulers. Without them, the system of tribute, trade, and sustenance that keeps the empire running would collapse. The tools of Aztec farming were not just about practicality, they were part of the social fabric that bound the empire together. They allowed farmers to fulfill their role in the tribute system and ensured that the empire could maintain its power and wealth. The work of the farmer, though often overlooked, was crucial to the success of the entire Aztec civilization. As we think about the role of agricultural tools in the larger system of Aztec society, it's clear that they were not just instruments of labor, they were instruments of power. The tools used by farmers were essential for maintaining the flow of food and tribute throughout the empire, and in this sense, they played a central role in the political and social order. The koa, the tapasli, and the atlacatl were more than just tools. They were symbols of the interconnectedness of the Aztec economy, spirituality, and politics. Now, as we continue to explore the world of Aztec farming and the tools that helped sustain their civilization, let's shift our attention to a crop that was not only important for its nutritional value, but also for its significance in Aztec rituals. Chili, wild maize, beans, and squash were staples in the Aztec diet. Chili held an almost sacred place in Aztec culture. Not only did it add flavor to the food, but it was also believed to have medicinal and spiritual properties. The tools used for cultivating, harvesting, and processing chili were crucial to Aztec agricultural success and, like other crops, were deeply connected to the spiritual practices that governed daily life. Imagine yourself in an Aztec chili field, the sun beating down on your back. The rows of chili plants are vibrant, their fruits ripening on the vine. The air is filled with the distinctive scent of fresh chili, a sharp, pungent smell that signals the heat of summer. You are holding a small, curved knife known as a tapasli, one of the key tools used by Aztec farmers to harvest chili pods. With this tool, you carefully cut the ripe peppers from the plants, making sure not to damage the delicate fruit. The tapasli's sharp, serrated edge makes it perfect for this task, allowing the farmer to slice through the stems without harming the plant or the peppers. In this field, you are part of a long tradition that connects the work you do to the divine. The chili plant, like other crops, was seen as a gift from the gods. The Aztecs believed that chili was a sacred food, gifted by the god Chicomacoatl, the goddess of sustenance and fertility. The act of harvesting chili was not just about gathering food. It was a way of honoring the gods and ensuring that the crops would continue to flourish. Historians still debate the exact role of chili in the everyday life of the Aztecs. While it was undoubtedly a staple in the diet, some scholars argue that it may have been a luxury crop, consumed mainly by the elite. Others suggest that it was a common food for both the nobility and the commoners, given its widespread use in Aztec cooking and rituals. Regardless of its social status, one thing is clear: chili was an essential part of the Aztec diet, both as a flavoring and as a vital part of religious ceremonies. The tools used to process chili were just as specialized as those used to harvest it. After the peppers were gathered, they would be dried and ground into powder using tools like malcajetes and teyolotes. These tools, made from volcanic rock, were essential for grinding not only chili, but also other key ingredients in Aztec cooking, such as maize and cacao. The process of grinding the chili was done with care, as it was believed that the act of grinding was not just for practical purposes, but also for releasing the essence of the food, which could then be offered to the gods. Imagine the scene now. You've harvested the chili, and now you are grinding it in a molkajete. The sound of the stone pestle grinding against the rough volcanic rock fills the air, and the sharp, smoky aroma of the chili wafts up, enveloping you in its intensity. This act of grinding is more than just food preparation. It's a connection to the gods, to the cycles of nature, and to the rich agricultural traditions of your ancestors. You are not simply preparing food for your family. You are participating in a larger spiritual practice, one that links you to the divine forces that govern your world. The grinding of chili was also tied to the preparation of zocolatl, the chocolate beverage that was a sacred offering in Aztec ceremonies. Zocolatl was made by mixing ground chili, cacao, and other ingredients into a thick, frothy drink that was consumed by the elite and offered to the gods. The ritual of preparing and consuming zocolatl was as important as its nutritional value. The tools used to prepare the drink, like the molkajete and tejolet, were integral to the process, ensuring that the flavors were properly mixed and that the drink was fit for the gods. Historians often speculate about the cultural and religious significance of zocolatl. Was it reserved for ceremonial use, or was it a drink that was consumed daily? Some believe that zocolatl was consumed primarily by the elite and used in ceremonies to honor the gods, while others argue that it was a common beverage enjoyed by the masses. Regardless of its status, zocolatl played an important role in Aztec life, both as a food and as a symbol of the Aztecs' relationship with the divine. In the fields, in the kitchens, and in the temples, chili was much more than just a food ingredient. It was a symbol of life and sustenance, a connection to the gods, and a key element in the spiritual and agricultural cycles that governed the Aztec world. The tools used to cultivate, harvest, and process chili were as important as the crop itself, for they allowed the Aztecs to participate in a sacred process that ensured the balance between humanity, nature, and the divine. As we reflect on the role of chili and its associated tools in Aztec agriculture, it becomes clear that these tools were far more than just practical instruments. They were part of a complex system of rituals, beliefs, and practices that tied the farmers to the land and the gods. The tools weren't simply used to harvest food. They were used to maintain the cosmic order, to honor the earth, and to ensure that the people of the Aztec Empire would continue to thrive. In the fields of the Aztec Empire, the tools were extensions of the farmers themselves, tools that connected the people to the land, to each other, and to the divine. And in the end, it was these tools, crafted with skill and reverence, that allowed the Aztecs to build one of the most successful and sophisticated agricultural systems in the ancient world. As we continue to uncover the intricacies of Aztec agriculture, we now turn to a fascinating aspect of their farming system that has perhaps not been given enough attention: the role of tools in the cultivation of maguey. The maguey plant, also known as agave, was one of the most versatile crops in Aztec agriculture. valued for its many uses. Not only was it cultivated for its sweet sap, which was used to make pulque, an alcoholic beverage, but it also provided fibers for textiles, needles, and other essential products. The tools used to harvest and process the maguey plant were just as important as those used for other crops, and they played a vital role in the economy, culture, and spirituality of the Aztec people. Imagine yourself standing in the middle of a maguey field, the tall, spiky plants surrounding you. The air is dry and warm, and the landscape stretches out before you, dotted with the sharp green leaves of the maguey. In your hand, you hold a specialized tool, the maguey spade. This tool is a long, sturdy spade with a sharp edge, designed to cut through the tough leaves of the maguey plant and extract the valuable sap. The maguey spade is a vital tool in the process of harvesting maguey, and it is carefully crafted to ensure that the sap can be collected without damaging the plant itself. The maguey plant was crucial to Aztec society. Not only did it provide pulque, but its fibers were also used to make ropes, clothing, and paper. The process of harvesting maguey was not an easy one. The maguey plant has thick, spiny leaves that can be difficult to cut through. Farmers had to carefully use their maguey spade to slice the leaves and expose the core of the plant, which contained the sap that would later be fermented into pulque. Once the sap was collected, it was fermented in large vats and turned into a drink that was consumed by the elite and used in religious ceremonies. Pulque was believed to have divine properties, and it was often offered to the gods as part of ceremonial rituals. Historians continue to debate the role of pulque in Aztec society. Was it a drink reserved only for the elite, or was it consumed by the broader population? Some argue that pulque was a luxury beverage enjoyed only by the nobility and the priests, while others suggest that it was a common drink that could be found throughout the empire. Regardless of its status, pulque played an important role in the religious and social life of the Aztecs, and its production was closely tied to the work of the farmers who harvested the maguey plant. In addition to its use in making pulque, the maguey plant had many other uses. The fibers of the maguey were used to make ropes, clothing, and even paper. The fibers were extracted by stripping the leaves of the plant, and the tools used to do this were similar to those used for harvesting maguey for pulque. Farmers would carefully strip the leaves, using a knife or a small spade to remove the tough outer layers and expose the soft fibers inside. These fibers were then processed into ropes, textiles, and paper, all of which were essential to the functioning of Aztec society. The versatility of the maguey plant is a testament to the Aztecs' deep understanding of the natural world and their ability to use the resources around them. The tools used to harvest and process maguey were integral to this system, allowing the Aztecs to create everything from alcoholic beverages to clothing and writing materials. The maguey spade, along with the other tools used in the maguey harvest, were not just practical, they were part of a larger system of resource management that helped sustain the Aztec economy and society. Now, imagine walking through an Aztec village during a festival. The air is thick with the scent of pulque, and the sound of music and dancing fills the streets. People are wearing garments made from maguey fibers, and the walls are adorned with paper made from the same plant. The tools used to harvest maguey, from the maguey spade to the knives used to strip the leaves, are displayed in a ceremonial setting, symbolizing the central role that maguey played in Aztec life. In this moment, the work of the farmers is celebrated, and their tools are seen as sacred objects, symbols of the hard labor and devotion that went into cultivating the plants that sustained the empire. The maguey plant was not just an agricultural product, it was a symbol of the Aztecs' deep connection to the land and the gods. The tools used to harvest it were not just instruments of labor, they were sacred tools that allowed the farmers to participate in the divine cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Every slice of the maguey spade, every drop of sap collected, was part of a larger spiritual practice that linked the farmers to the gods and ensured that the crops would continue to thrive. As we reflect on the role of maguey in Aztec society, it becomes clear that the tools used to cultivate and process this plant were just as important as the chinampas or the koa. These tools were not just about growing food or making goods. They were part of a larger system that connected the Aztec people to the earth, the gods, and each other. The maguey plant, with its many uses and spiritual significance, was a perfect example of how Aztec agriculture was not just about practicality, it was about creating harmony between humanity, nature, and the divine. As we continue to explore the tools and techniques that powered Aztec agriculture, let's now focus on the role of ceremonial and ritual tools that were not just used in farming, but also in the religious and cultural practices of the Aztec people. Agriculture was far more than just a means of providing sustenance. It was deeply tied to the Aztec spiritual beliefs, and many of the tools used in farming were also part of sacred rituals designed to ensure a good harvest, maintain balance with the gods, and honor the natural world. One of the most important ceremonies in Aztec agricultural practices was the ritual of the harvest. This ceremony involved offerings to the gods of fertility, particularly Cineotl, the god of maize, and Tlaloc, the god of rain. Farmers believed that by performing these rituals, they would ensure a bountiful harvest. The tools used in these rituals, from the sacred koa to ceremonial knives, were deeply imbued with spiritual significance. These weren't just tools for planting or harvesting, they were instruments of divine connection. Imagine yourself at an agricultural ceremony in the heart of Tenochtitlan. The air is thick with incense, and the sun sets slowly over the city. You stand with your koa, not for tilling the soil, but as a symbol of your connection to the earth and the gods. The ceremony is about to begin. The priest holds a ceremonial tapasli, a curved obsidian knife, and prepares to make the first cut of the harvest. It's not just a harvest, it's a moment of sacred significance. With each slice, the harvest is offered back to the gods in gratitude, ensuring that the cycle of life and death continues, bringing blessings for the people. The use of farming tools in religious rituals underscores the Aztec belief that agriculture was more than just a physical task. It was a sacred act, one that involved not only working with the earth but also acknowledging the divine forces that governed the land. The koa, tapasli, and other agricultural tools used in these ceremonies were seen as instruments of sacred labor, connecting the farmers directly to the gods and ensuring that their efforts were fruitful. Historians debate whether these ceremonies were universally practiced by all farmers or whether they were more common among the elite or the priests. Some argue that the rituals were largely restricted to the priestly class, while others suggest that the common people also took part in these ceremonies to maintain their relationship with the gods. Regardless of who performed them, the fact remains that these rituals were an essential part of the Aztec agricultural system. The tools used in these ceremonies were more than mere implements. They were sacred objects that ensured harmony between humanity, the land, and the divine. Now, imagine yourself in the field, the koa in your hands. As you prepare the soil for planting, you pause to offer a silent prayer, asking for the gods' blessings. The work is hard, but the act of planting and harvesting is not just about food. It's about maintaining the balance between the physical and spiritual worlds. You can feel the weight of the land beneath your feet, the rhythm of your movements as you dig and plant, and the connection to the cycle of nature that has sustained your people for generations. The tools used in these rituals, whether they were ceremonial knives like the tapasli, or even the maguey spade used to harvest agave, were not just symbols of labor. They were sacred objects that helped the Aztecs participate in the cosmic order. Every slice, every cut, every prayer was a part of this larger spiritual process, ensuring that the gods would favor their crops and that the harvest would be plentiful. The role of ritual in Aztec farming was also reflected in the way tools were cared for. Unlike modern farming tools, which may be stored in sheds or toolboxes, Aztec farming tools, especially those used for ritual purposes, were carefully maintained and often kept in sacred spaces. The koa used for planting, for example, might be ritually cleansed before it was used in a ceremony. This care and reverence for tools reflected the Aztecs' belief that farming was not just about sustenance, it was about ensuring that the divine forces continued to favor the land and its people. The connection between the sacred and the practical was at the core of Aztec agricultural practices. Tools like the koa, the tapasli, and the itlacacatli were not simply used to grow crops. They were part of the larger ritualistic system that ensured the well-being of the people. Farmers were not just laborers, they were spiritual participants in a greater cosmic cycle, and the tools they used were instruments of that participation. As we think about the sacred nature of Aztec farming, it's clear that these tools were far more than simple instruments of labor. They were part of a larger system that intertwined the physical, spiritual, and communal aspects of Aztec life. The tools allowed the farmers to engage in rituals that honored the gods, maintained the fertility of the land, and ensured that the empire could continue to thrive. The legacy of these tools and the spiritual practices they were part of continues today in various forms. While modern agriculture may not involve the same level of ritual or divine connection, the underlying principles of respect for the earth and the importance of sustainable farming still resonate. The Aztec farming tools, and the way they were used in sacred ceremonies, remind us of the deep connection between humans and the natural world. The Aztecs understood that their labor in the fields was not just for their own survival, it was a way of maintaining harmony between humanity, nature, and the divine. As we continue our exploration of the Aztec agricultural system, it's essential to step back and consider the broader role that tools played in the community and the empire as a whole. While farming was often viewed as the domain of the common people, the tools used in agriculture were integral to the empire's success, influencing not only the economy but also the social structure. These tools allowed the Aztecs to grow enough food to sustain a vast and expanding empire, feeding millions of people, from the farmers working the fields to the nobility and the warriors. But the connection between agriculture, tools, and the Aztec community went beyond simple sustenance. It was also about organization, division of labor, and even trade. The first thing to understand about the Aztec system is that farming was organized at a communal level. While individual farmers worked their plots of land, much of Aztec agriculture was rooted in collective effort. Farmers, especially those who worked on chinampas or in communal fields, were part of a larger agricultural network that linked the rural and urban areas of the empire. The tools used by these farmers, like the koa, tapasli, and maguey spade, were shared among the community, and the agricultural output was often distributed based on a system of tribute and exchange. This system ensured that everyone in Aztec society had access to the food they needed, from the commoners to the rulers. Imagine yourself standing in a communal field, surrounded by your fellow farmers, each of you holding a koa in hand. As you dig into the soil, you notice that some of your neighbors are working the fields with the same tools, while others are using different implements. The tools may vary slightly depending on the specific task. Some use the maguey spade to harvest agave, while others use the tapasli to cut maize. But the collective effort is clear. Each farmer, using their tools, contributes to a larger process that feeds the community. The harvest is not just for the individual, it is for the whole. This sense of collective labor, where each person's work feeds into the larger system, reflects the deeply communal nature of Aztec society. This communal approach was central to the success of the empire, and the tools used by farmers were part of the system that made it all possible. While the agricultural tools themselves were practical, they were also symbols of cooperation and interdependence. Without these tools, each one designed for a specific purpose in the agricultural process, the entire system would break down. The koa, for example, was not just a tool for soil preparation. It was part of the intricate web of labor that connected different regions of the empire. The tools allowed farmers to prepare the land, plant crops, manage water, and harvest food, all in a way that ensured the stability of Aztec society. The role of tools in this system extended beyond the farmers themselves. The tools used in agriculture were often traded, shared, or passed down through generations, creating a constant flow of resources within the community. Trade was an essential part of Aztec life, and agricultural tools were a commodity in and of themselves. The koa or tepasli might be crafted in one region and then traded with farmers in another area, ensuring that the necessary tools were available to everyone. These tools were often crafted from materials that were locally available: obsidian for blades, wood for handles, and stone for grinding, and their craftsmanship was highly valued. Imagine now that you are part of a bustling marketplace in Tenochtitlan. The air is filled with the sounds of traders haggling, the scents of freshly harvested maize and beans, and the sight of tools being exchanged for goods. As you walk through the market, you notice that some farmers are selling their koa or maguey spades, which have been finely crafted by local artisans. These tools, while simple in design, are highly valued. Farmers, traders, and even the nobility rely on these tools to ensure that crops are properly cultivated and harvested. The exchange of these tools is just as important as the exchange of food. Without the right tools, the food supply would be compromised, and the economy would falter. The trade of agricultural tools was not just about practicality. It was also tied to the larger economic and political structure of the Aztec Empire. Farmers, who made up the lower classes, would provide a portion of their harvest as tribute to the emperor. In return, they were given protection and access to goods from the capital. The tools they used, whether for planting maize, harvesting cacao, or tending chinampas, allowed them to contribute to this larger system, ensuring the continued flow of goods and resources throughout the empire. The tools, in a sense, were the building blocks of the empire's economy. At the same time, the tools used by the Aztec farmers were symbols of their social status. While all farmers were essential to the empire's survival, their tools could also indicate their position within society. The koa, for example, was a tool used by farmers of all social classes, but the quality and craftsmanship of the koa could vary greatly depending on the region or the individual farmer. Higher quality tools, often made from better materials or crafted by skilled artisans, were considered valuable and might be passed down through generations. The tools used in agriculture, much like the crops themselves, were a reflection of the status and role of the farmer within the larger social structure of Aztec society. In essence, the tools of Aztec agriculture weren't just practical, they were integral to the political, economic, and social systems that kept the empire running. From the communal effort of farming, where tools like the koa allowed farmers to work together, to the trade of tools and crops in the marketplace. Every tool used in Aztec agriculture was part of a larger web of interdependence. These tools were the silent yet essential instruments that helped sustain the empire, providing the food, resources, and economic structure needed to support one of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world. Now, imagine stepping back from the bustling marketplace, where the sounds of haggling fade into the background, and the tools, worn and weathered from use, are passed on from one farmer to the next. These tools, which have been passed down for generations, are not just physical objects, they are part of a living legacy that connects the Aztec farmers to the land, the gods, and the empire. With each use, these tools carry forward the work of countless farmers who have tended the land, grown the crops, and helped sustain the empire. The legacy of the Aztec agricultural system lives on in these tools, each one a symbol of the collective effort that allowed the empire to thrive. As we continue our exploration into the tools of Aztec agriculture, it's essential to consider not just the functionality of the tools themselves, but how they were tied to Aztec social structure and the concept of labor division. The Aztec Empire was an incredibly complex society with a sophisticated system of agriculture that required the cooperation of many different groups, each contributing their skills and tools to the greater good. This division of labor was not only seen in the way that farmers used their tools, but also in how the tools were shared, maintained, and passed down through generations, reflecting the communal nature of Aztec society. Imagine yourself walking through an Aztec village. The air is thick with the sounds of everyday life, voices calling out, children playing, and the clinking of farming tools being cleaned and repaired. The tools used in agriculture, from the koa for planting to the tapasli for harvesting, are seen everywhere. But while each farmer may use these tools in their daily labor, the very ownership of these tools speaks to the larger system of organization that defined the empire. The tools are not merely functional, they serve as symbols of responsibility, of labor, and of cooperation in the larger economic and political structure. In Aztec society, the division of labor was an essential part of the agricultural process. While farmers, known as tlacotl, were responsible for the actual cultivation and harvest, other groups within the empire played key roles in the agricultural cycle. The elite class, for example, was deeply involved in organizing the distribution of crops and the tribute system. Skilled artisans crafted the farming tools, while priests and spiritual leaders performed the religious rituals that ensured a successful harvest. The tools themselves were a manifestation of the social roles each group played in the agricultural system, linking them all together in a shared effort to sustain the empire. Consider the tools like the maguey spade, used for harvesting the agave plant, a crucial crop for making pulque, and think about the labor required to harvest it. The maguey farmer's role was not isolated, it was part of the larger agricultural system, and the maguey spade was an essential tool in ensuring that this resource could be harvested efficiently. Imagine the Aztec worker standing in the sun, wielding this tool to cut through the thick leaves of the maguey, extracting the sap that would be turned into the highly prized pulque. The maguey spade was a tool that symbolized the contribution of one group in the larger agricultural process, working in harmony with the other tools used by farmers in the fields and the chinampas, or floating gardens. The social structure of Aztec agriculture was highly organized, and this organization extended to the tools used. Farmers often worked in communal groups, known as calpulli, which were social units made up of families that shared land, labor, and tools. The calpulli system ensured that the work of farming was shared among the community, allowing for a more efficient division of labor. Within the calpulli, the tools were shared, passed down, and maintained as communal property. The koa, for example, was a simple but crucial tool that could be used for multiple tasks: tilling the soil, planting seeds, weeding, and even managing water. In this sense, the koa became a tool that not only helped maintain the soil, but also reinforced the sense of collective responsibility in farming. Imagine yourself within a calpulli, where the tools are shared among the members of the community. You are working alongside your neighbors, each of you using the koa to plant maize or beans in a carefully coordinated rhythm. The sun is high overhead, and the work is hard, but the sense of cooperation is palpable. You don't own the land or the tools. Everything is shared. The crops you grow belong to the entire community. The work you do today will ensure that everyone has enough to eat, that the empire remains strong, and that the gods remain pleased. In the background, you can hear the faint sound of an artisan sharpening a tapasli, preparing it for the upcoming harvest season. These artisans, who crafted the tools used by the farmers, were highly valued members of Aztec society. Their skill in creating durable, sharp tools was critical to the success of the farming system. Without their expertise, the farmers wouldn't have the proper implements to tend to the land. In a way, the artisans were just as important to the agricultural process as the farmers themselves. The tools used in Aztec agriculture were not just practical instruments, they were symbols of the interconnectedness of the entire society. Each tool, from the koa to the maguey spade, played a part in a larger system that relied on the cooperation of different groups within Aztec society. The tools were not owned by individuals, they were shared resources, passed down from one generation to the next. This communal aspect of Aztec farming ensured that the labor of agriculture was not a solitary effort, but a collective one, where everyone played a role in sustaining the empire. Historians have long debated how the division of labor in Aztec society affected the tools used in agriculture. Was it a rigid system where the roles were strictly divided, or was there more flexibility in how different groups participated in farming? While we may not have all the answers, it's clear that the use of tools in Aztec agriculture was deeply tied to the social structure. The tools allowed for the efficient and sustainable cultivation of crops, but they also reinforced the interconnectedness of the people, the land, and the gods. Now, as we reflect on the role of the koa, the magui spade, and the topasli, we can see that these tools were not just instruments for planting or harvesting. They were symbols of the social and spiritual fabric of Aztec society. The work they facilitated was not just for the benefit of the individual, but for the benefit of the community and the empire as a whole. These tools helped bind the empire together, ensuring that the Aztec civilization could thrive for centuries, rooted in a system of cooperation, shared labor, and respect for the gods. As we continue our exploration into the tools of Aztec agriculture, it's important to recognize how these tools reflect not just the technical mastery of the Aztecs, but also their profound understanding of environmental sustainability. The Aztecs didn't simply farm to survive, they farmed with the land in mind, striving to maintain a delicate balance between human activity and nature. The tools they used were crafted not just for efficiency, but also with an understanding of the land's natural rhythms, and many of them were designed to minimize harm to the environment while maximizing crop production. One of the most notable tools that highlights this balance is the atlacatl, a tool used to manage the flow of water in the Aztec irrigation system. The atlacatl was a simple wooden device used to divert water from canals into the fields or the chinampas, or floating gardens. The careful regulation of water was crucial for the success of Aztec agriculture, especially in the lake environment where Tenochtitlan was built. Without proper irrigation, crops would not grow, and the empire could not sustain its growing population. Imagine yourself standing by the edge of a canal, the gentle murmur of flowing water surrounding you. You hold the atlacatl in your hand, positioning it carefully to direct the water toward your crops. The tool is simple but effective, allowing you to maintain just the right balance of water for the plants. Too much water, and the soil would become flooded. Too little, and the crops would wither. It's a delicate task, but it's one that the Aztecs performed with remarkable skill. The atlacatl, in its simplicity, reflects the Aztecs' deep understanding of how to work with nature rather than against it. The role of water in Aztec farming wasn't just a matter of irrigation. It was tied to the spiritual and cultural practices of the Aztecs. Water was seen as a gift from the gods, particularly from Tlaloc, the god of rain, who was responsible for ensuring the fertility of the land. The tools used to manage water were therefore seen as sacred, and their proper use was integral to maintaining the balance between human labor and divine favor. The act of diverting water with the atlacatl wasn't just about feeding the people. It was about honoring Tlaloc and ensuring that his blessings would continue to fall upon the land. Historians often argue about how much the Aztecs truly understood about the mechanics of water management. Were their irrigation systems based on trial and error, or did they have a deep, intuitive understanding of hydrology? While the precise origins of Aztec irrigation techniques remain debated, it's clear that they were incredibly effective. The Aztecs created a network of canals and aqueducts that allowed them to transform the marshy landscape around Tenochtitlan into productive farmland. These irrigation systems were maintained with great care and attention, ensuring that the soil remained fertile and the crops continued to thrive. In addition to water management, the Aztecs also practiced crop rotation and soil replenishment, another example of their sustainable farming practices. The chinampas, or floating gardens, were especially effective in this regard. By using the organic material from the lake bed to build the raised gardens, the Aztecs were able to create a fertile growing environment that allowed crops to flourish year-round. The rich, nutrient-dense soil of the chinampas was replenished naturally with each planting season, and the rotation of crops ensured that the soil remained healthy and productive. Imagine yourself working on the chinampa, your hands busy planting maize or beans in the dark, fertile soil. As you work, you think about the way the chinampa is built. It's a system designed to make the most of the land without depleting its resources. The organic material in the soil is constantly renewed, allowing you to grow multiple crops in the same space. The plants you cultivate here aren't just for your own benefit, they are part of a system that nourishes both the people and the land. This commitment to sustainability was not just practical, it was also spiritual. The Aztecs saw themselves as caretakers of the earth, and their farming practices reflected their belief that they had a responsibility to the land. Their tools, like the koa, the atlacatl, and the maguey spade, were not just instruments of labor. They were symbols of their sacred duty to the earth and the gods. By using these tools with care and reverence, they ensured that the land would continue to provide for future generations. The Aztecs also understood the importance of preserving their environment for future generations. They used a variety of techniques to ensure that their farming systems were sustainable, including the practice of rotating crops to prevent soil depletion. This careful attention to the land ensured that the Aztecs were able to feed their people without exhausting the earth's resources. The tools they used were designed not just for immediate success, but for long-term sustainability, ensuring that the empire could continue to thrive for centuries. As we reflect on the role of tools like the koa, the atlacatl, and the maguey spade, we see that the Aztecs were far ahead of their time in terms of environmental stewardship. Their agricultural tools were not just designed for immediate productivity, they were part of a larger system that sought to maintain balance with nature. By using their tools with care and respect, the Aztecs were able to create a thriving agricultural system that not only sustained their empire, but also ensured the continued fertility of the land for generations to come. Imagine now standing at the edge of a thriving chinampa, the crops growing strong and healthy in the fertile soil. The sun is setting, casting a golden light across the water. As you look out over the fields, you realize that the work you're doing is part of something much larger. You are working not just to feed your family, but to honor the earth, the gods, and the future of the Aztec Empire. The tools you use, the koa, the atlacatl, and the maguey spade, are symbols of your role in this larger system. By using these tools with care, you are ensuring that the cycle of life, death, and rebirth continues, and that the empire will thrive for generations to come. As we continue to delve into the farming tools of the Aztecs, let's turn our attention to another key aspect of their agricultural system, the relationship between tools and the broader agricultural practices that defined their unique and efficient farming methods. While we've already explored tools like the koa for planting, the topasli for harvesting, and the atlacatl for managing irrigation, there's one key tool we haven't fully discussed yet, the maguey spade, which was essential for the cultivation and harvesting of agave, a plant that was vital to Aztec culture. The maguey plant provided the Aztecs with much-needed resources, from food and drink to textiles and fibers. The maguey spade was a specialized tool used to cut through the tough, spiny leaves of the maguey plant and extract its valuable sap. The process of extracting sap from the maguey was a labor-intensive task that required precision, skill, and the right tools. Imagine yourself standing in the midst of a maguey field, the air thick with the smell of the agave plants, the landscape dotted with their towering leaves. In your hand, you hold the maguey spade, a sharp, sturdy tool with a long wooden handle and a broad, flat blade, designed to slice through the tough outer layers of the plant and access the soft, sweet sap that was prized for its many uses. The act of harvesting maguey was not only about extracting the sap, it was a highly symbolic practice, deeply tied to Aztec religious rituals. The maguey spade was more than just a tool for farming, it was a tool for maintaining balance with the gods. The Aztecs believed that the maguey plant was a sacred gift from the gods, and the act of harvesting its sap was seen as a spiritual offering. This ritual was tied to the Aztecs' belief that humans were responsible for maintaining the delicate balance between the divine and the earthly realms. Every time a maguey plant was harvested, the farmers would make offerings to the gods, thanking them for the bounty they had received and asking for continued blessings. Historians still debate the extent to which the Aztecs used the maguey spade as a ceremonial tool, but it's clear that it was not just a simple instrument of labor. It was an important part of the Aztec spiritual and cultural practices. By using the maguey spade to extract the sap, farmers were participating in a larger, sacred process that connected them to the gods and ensured the continued fertility of the land. The maguey spade was not just a tool for survival, it was a symbol of the Aztecs' relationship with the natural world and their gods. In addition to its spiritual significance, the maguey spade also played a crucial role in the Aztec economy. The sap extracted from the maguey plant was used to make pulque, an alcoholic beverage that was a central part of Aztec society. Pulque was consumed in large quantities, particularly by the elite, and it was also used in religious ceremonies to honor the gods. The maguey spade allowed the Aztecs to efficiently harvest the sap, ensuring a steady supply of pulque for consumption and trade. The tools used to harvest and process maguey were integral to the economic structure of Aztec society. Pulque was not just a drink, it was a valuable commodity, traded throughout the empire. Farmers who specialized in maguey cultivation played a vital role in this economy, and their tools, like the maguey spade, were essential to their success. The labor involved in harvesting maguey was difficult, requiring precision and skill, but it was also highly rewarding. The maguey spade, with its sharp blade and long handle, was the tool that allowed these farmers to reap the benefits of their labor, contributing to the prosperity of their communities and the empire as a whole. But the maguey spade wasn't just used for harvesting sap. The maguey plant was also used for its fibers, which were turned into ropes, clothing, and paper. The tools used to harvest and process these fibers were just as important as the tools used for sap extraction. Farmers used small knives and blades to strip the leaves of the maguey and extract the fibers. These fibers were then processed into textiles that were used for clothing, trade, and religious purposes. The tools used to strip and process the maguey fibers were crafted with the same precision and care as the tools used to harvest the sap, ensuring that the fibers were carefully extracted without damaging them. The maguey spade and the other tools used for maguey cultivation were central to the success of Aztec agriculture. They allowed the Aztecs to harness the full potential of the maguey plant, providing them with everything from food and drink to materials for clothing and writing. These tools were not just practical, they were essential to the functioning of Aztec society. Without the maguey spade and its counterparts, the Aztecs would not have been able to produce the pulque and textiles that were so important to their economy and culture. Now, imagine standing in the heart of a maguey field, your maguey spade in hand. The sun is setting, casting a golden light across the landscape, and you pause to offer a prayer to the gods, thanking them for the bounty of the maguey plants. The work you're doing is not just about survival, it's about maintaining balance with the divine, ensuring that the crops continue to flourish and that the gods remain pleased. The maguey spade in your hand is not just a tool for harvesting, it is a connection to the land, the gods, and the prosperity of the Aztec people. As we reflect on the role of the maguey spade in Aztec agriculture, it becomes clear that it was not just a practical instrument, it was an essential part of a larger system that connected the physical and spiritual aspects of Aztec life. From the sacred harvesting of maguey to the production of pulque and textiles, the tools used in this process were integral to the success of Aztec agriculture and the prosperity of the empire. As we near the conclusion of our journey through Aztec agricultural tools, it's important to take a moment and reflect on the broader cultural and ecological wisdom that these tools represent. Aztec society, built on the backbone of its agricultural prowess, demonstrated not only technical expertise but a profound understanding of how to live in harmony with the natural world. The tools they developed, whether for planting, harvesting, or managing water, were not merely functional, they were part of a holistic system that intertwined agricultural practices with spirituality, environmental stewardship, and social cohesion. Throughout this exploration, we've seen how Aztec tools like the koa, the tepasli, and the atlacacali were essential to growing crops, such as maize, beans, and chili, and how they were deeply connected to the spiritual life of the people. From the act of planting, which was seen as a form of worship, to the harvest, which was marked by offerings to the gods. Aztec agriculture was never just about providing food. It was about participating in the larger cosmic order. The tools were extensions of this sacred relationship between humanity, nature, and the divine. Now, as we look at the legacy of Aztec agricultural tools, it's clear that their relationship to the land was rooted in sustainability. The use of chinampas, the floating gardens, illustrates how the Aztecs utilized the resources available to them to create a highly productive and sustainable system. These man-made islands, built on the marshy lake beds, allowed the Aztecs to grow crops year-round, taking advantage of the fertile soil and abundant water supply. This sustainable farming practice was supported by a system of tools designed to work in harmony with the environment. The koa and other tools allowed farmers to care for the soil, preserve water, and rotate crops, ensuring the long-term health of the land. Imagine, once again, standing on a chinampa, the sound of water gently lapping against the soil as you tend to your crops. The air is fresh, filled with the scent of growing plants and the rich, earthy aroma of fertile soil. As you work, you notice that the soil is well aerated, the crops are thriving, and the balance of water and nutrients is just right. The koa in your hands is not just a tool, it's a key part of a sustainable system that connects you to the earth, the gods, and the future of your people. While the chinampa system may seem like an ancient method, its principles of sustainable farming have echoes in modern practices. The use of organic material to enrich the soil, the rotation of crops to preserve soil health, and the careful management of water resources are all practices that modern agriculture strives to adopt in order to create more sustainable farming systems. The Aztecs, long before the advent of modern environmental movements, were practicing methods of farming that not only ensured their survival, but also respected the natural world around them. But sustainability was not just about the land, it was about the community as well. The tools used by Aztec farmers, like the koa and maguey spade, were shared resources within a community. The work of farming was communal, and the tools were passed down, cared for, and used by many hands. Farmers worked together, cultivating the land and ensuring that there was enough food for the community. The division of labor was clear, with specific tasks assigned to different groups, but the tools allowed everyone to play a role in sustaining the empire. Now, picture the bustling energy of an Aztec market, where farmers have gathered to trade their goods. The tools they carry aren't just instruments of labor, they are symbols of the collective effort that sustains the empire. Each farmer's contribution is essential to the success of the community, and the tools they use allow them to participate in the larger social and economic systems of Aztec society. Whether it's the koa used for planting, the topasli for harvesting, or the atlacacatli for managing water, these tools are part of a shared system that connects the farmer to the land, the community, and the empire. But tools were not just used for food production, they also played a role in maintaining the sacred relationship between humans and the gods. The spiritual aspects of farming, represented by rituals and offerings, ensured that the Aztecs remained in harmony with the divine forces that governed the earth. Every tool, from the koa to the maguey spade, was seen as an instrument of connection to the gods. The act of planting, harvesting, and cultivating was not just an earthly task, it was a sacred duty, one that required the farmer to honor the gods and give thanks for the abundance of the land. The Aztecs' understanding of agriculture was thus not just practical, it was holistic. It encompassed the spiritual, social, environmental, and economic dimensions of life. The tools they used were not just instruments of survival, they were part of a larger system that connected them to the earth, the divine, and each other. The koa, the atlacacatli, and the topasli were integral to the success of this system, ensuring that the Aztecs could continue to thrive in an ever-changing world. Imagine the collective effort of the Aztec community, each person using their tools to cultivate the land and ensure the prosperity of the empire. The tools are passed down through generations, each one a symbol of the work that sustains the people. The koa is no longer just a farming tool, it is a link between past and present, between the individual and the community, between humanity and the divine. As you hold it in your hands, you are not just planting seeds, you are participating in the sacred cycle of life, death, and rebirth that has sustained the Aztec people for centuries. In the end, the legacy of Aztec agricultural tools lives on, not just in the objects themselves, but in the principles of sustainability, community, and respect for the earth. The tools of the Aztecs were more than just practical instruments, they were sacred objects that connected the people to the land, the gods, and the future. The work of the farmer, aided by these tools, ensured the survival and prosperity of the empire. And as we look forward to the future, we can draw inspiration from the Aztecs' deep understanding of the natural world and their commitment to living in harmony with it. As we approach the end of our journey through Aztec agricultural tools and techniques, it's important to reflect on the enduring legacy of the Aztec agricultural system. From the simple koa to the sacred tools used in rituals, each implement in the Aztec toolkit tells a story of ingenuity, spirituality, and connection to the earth. The Aztecs' tools were not just practical, they were part of a larger worldview that saw farming as a sacred practice, deeply entwined with religious beliefs, community values, and environmental stewardship. The tools we've discussed, such as the koa for planting, the magui spade for harvesting agave, and the atlacatl for managing water, were integral to the success of the Aztec agricultural system. These tools enabled the Aztecs to grow a wide variety of crops, manage their resources efficiently, and sustain one of the largest empires in the ancient world. But what truly set Aztec agriculture apart was how these tools were imbued with meaning. They were not just implements of survival, they were instruments of reverence, shaped by centuries of wisdom and passed down through generations. As we reflect on the role of these tools, it becomes clear that they were more than just objects, they were part of the intricate relationship between humans and the natural world. The Aztecs understood that farming was not just about growing food. It was about maintaining balance with the gods, ensuring the fertility of the land, and honoring the earth that provided sustenance. The tools they used, whether for planting, harvesting, or managing water, were seen as sacred instruments, designed not only to serve practical purposes, but to connect the farmers to the divine. Imagine, once more, standing in a chinampa field, the soft hum of nature surrounding you. The koa in your hands feels familiar, worn smooth from years of use. As you carefully plant maize or beans, you remember that each strike of the tool is not just about nourishing your family, it's about fulfilling a sacred duty to the gods and the community. The tools you use are extensions of the work you do, part of a cycle that connects you to your ancestors, the land, and the divine forces that govern life. The rhythm of planting becomes a form of prayer, a way of offering thanks for the earth's bounty and ensuring the prosperity of the empire. But the legacy of Aztec agricultural tools goes beyond the tools themselves. The practices they supported, crop rotation, water management, and sustainable farming, continue to resonate today. The Aztecs' understanding of how to work with nature, rather than exploit it, can offer valuable lessons from modern agriculture. As we face challenges like climate change and the need for sustainable farming practices, the principles that guided the Aztecs' agricultural system, balance, respect, and cooperation, are more relevant than ever. Reflecting on the legacy of Aztec agriculture also invites us to consider how modern society views farming tools and practices. While our tools may be more advanced, the fundamental relationship between humans and the land remains the same. Like the Aztecs, we depend on the earth for our survival, and like them, we must find ways to live in harmony with nature. The Aztecs' approach to agriculture was not just about producing food. It was about respecting the earth, maintaining balance, and honoring the divine forces that shape their world. The tools of the Aztec farmers, whether the koa, tapasli, or atlacatl, were symbols of this balance. Each tool represented a different aspect of farming, from planting and irrigation to harvesting and ritual. But beyond their practical uses, these tools were part of a larger system that reflected the Aztecs' deep understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. The work of the farmer, aided by these tools, was not isolated, it was part of a larger, sacred process that tied the community, the land, and the gods together in a continuous cycle of life. As we bring this exploration of Aztec farming tools to a close, let's take one last moment to consider how these tools connect us to the past. Each tool, from the humble koa to the sacred maguey spade, represents the labor, wisdom, and spirituality of the Aztec people. They were not just tools, they were part of the cultural fabric that allowed the Aztecs to thrive in a challenging environment, building an empire that lasted for centuries. The Aztec farming tools we've discussed, though ancient, offer us a glimpse into a worldview that saw farming as more than just a means of survival. It was a sacred act, a connection to the gods and the earth, and a vital part of the larger system that sustained the empire. As we move forward into a world where sustainable agriculture is more important than ever, the lessons of the Aztecs remind us of the value of working with nature, respecting the earth, and maintaining the balance between human activity and the divine. Now, imagine standing in a field of maize, the sun setting behind you. The tools you've used, worn and weathered, are carefully put away for the season. The cycle of planting, harvesting, and offering has come to an end, but the work continues. The legacy of the tools, the practices, and the people who used them lives on, passed down through the generations, continuing the tradition of farming, reverence, and respect for the earth. Good night.